Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform, available only on PC, known as iRacing. This series, of course, sponsored by Apex Racing Academy and IMB Racewear. Today, it is Wednesday, the 6th of July, 2022. And that means it is time for the season finale. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have gone through 11 out of our 12 rounds so far. We have seen frantic racing action, which started all the way back in the United States of America. It went across into continental Europe. We even made a brief foray into Japan. And now we are back here in France for the season finale at the Circuit de 24 Heures du Mans, or Le Mans as it's known in short. And it's going to be a cracker. It's 2 hours of racing that lies ahead. It's one feature race, no qualifying session. It's all in no holds barred action with those mandatory pit stops as well, all of which we'll come on to very shortly. We've got a lot to get through before we get underway, but it is the case. We'll be bringing the curtain down tonight, and we still have 3 Drivers' Championships of which to conclude, plus also the Teams' Championship to wrap up. And our schedule for doing so tonight will be as follows. The times in British Summertime, that's BST or UTC +1. In approximately 19 minutes time, we'll begin underway with the formation of the grid and kicking off with the feature race, our one and only item on the schedule, and that'll be a 2-hour race, by the end of which we have the checkered flag, of course, and we bring the season to its conclusion, indeed the championships to the conclusion. Tonight's broadcast is being brought to you live on 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel. Alternatively, if you are a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing to tune in there. Or last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. And who is TX141? Well, that'll be myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit in the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all the racing action tonight and have been in the commentary box since the season opener. Well, it is the case. This series, of course, are sponsored by Apex Racing Academy and IMB Racewear. And it's only fair that we introduce our title sponsors, starting with Apex Racing Academy. So I hear you ask, who is Apex Racing Academy? Well, they're not just a setup shop. They're dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions, and in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up now at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. And of course, Apex Racing Academy, a huge shout out to them and a thank you to them from us here at NXTGEN Racing, title sponsor for this series. And it is the case, we've continued our partnership with Apex Racing Academy, dating all the way back to Season 1 of the GT3 Championship here on iRacing as hosted by NXTGEN. And they're contributing not just to the back-end organisation of this series, but also to the prize pool for what is our GT3 Apex Racing Academy class. That's the GT3 ARA Pro and GT3 ARA AM classes, where Apex Racing Academy yearly subscriptions are up for grabs for our winning drivers in the championship. Meanwhile, it will be the case that our LMP Pro class drivers who fall into the Apex Racing Academy lobby, as it used to be known back when we had 2 separate lobbies, they'll be receiving a cash prize pool, the value of which is to be confirmed, and it is being provided up front by NXTGEN Racing directly. But thank you once again to Apex Racing Academy. And now we come to IMB Racewear, and it is the case that IMB Racewear needs no introduction, for they deliver racewear for both sim and real life racers, which enables the racer to make the impact they always wanted. What sets IMB Racewear apart from the competition, however, is that their racewear prides itself on individuality, for it is designed for you by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products. Whether you're looking for racing gloves, racing shoes, or team clothing, there are no limits to levels of customization available, and if you want to know more and get your hands on your own bespoke racewear, be sure to head to imbracewear.com today for further information. That website again, imbracewear.com. And indeed, a huge thank you to IMB Raceware, the other major title sponsor for this series. They've been working with us here at NXTGEN for multiple series, indeed multiple years. I think it dates back before even the iRacing series, unless I'm very much mistaken. But IMB Raceware, as well as providing back-end support for this series, have also added to the prize pool for what used to be known as the IMB Raceware lobby. Now it is just simply a combination of the two lobbies, of course, whereby a set of custom gloves are up for grabs for our GT3 IMB Raceware class winners. So that is the GT3 IMB Pro class and also the GT3 IMB AM class, and this will go on top of the cash prize pool, which is being provided to those classes by NXTGEN Racing. Meanwhile, our LMP2 AM class, of which used to be in the IMB Raceware lobby before the merge, their prize pool is a cash prize pool, the value of which is to be confirmed, and that is being provided by NXTGEN Racing, of course. But thank you once again to IMB Raceware. Now we come from our sponsors to talking about the calendar. Well, this calendar, it's been mostly covered, for we are now in the bottom right-hand corner. We are at Le Mans for the final 2-hour race of the season, the third of our 3 2-hour races, and it is the case, of course, that we are coming to the end of what's been a fantastic season. As we said earlier, it has travelled all the way around the globe, and it started off on the 6th of April at Watkins Glen. We saw 4 weeks of racing action in the North American continent, wrapping up at Daytona, before we made our way to the European continent, kicking off on the 11th of May with the Red Bull Ring, and concluding briefly at Silverstone on the 15th of June with a trip to Japan that followed the week after, specifically Suzuka. But then last time out, of course, we made our way back to the European continent for the Nürburgring Grand Prix Strecker Circuit, and we saw fantastic racing action there and the confirmation of a number of our championship winners. And tonight we bring the curtain down, of course, at the Circuit des 24 Heures du Mans, what is the 6th of July. And coming on to our championship standings, it is the case we kick off with the LMP2 Pro class. And as I mentioned last time out, is the case that Chris Daines was able to wrap up the championship at Suzuka in round number 10. So really it was a case for him last time out just trying to grab as many winners' trophies as possible, and he did so in emphatic fashion, having a Grand Slam result at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, picking up the maximum points all, and he'll be looking to do that once again tonight, given he has been the fastest of our LMP drivers throughout the series. Gaz Williams on a confirmed P2 there, and now the biggest question is between Dan Skinner and Jamie Dorey in the battle for P3 and the best of the rest. Who is going to come out on top? Arguably, Dan Skinner is the favourite, 13 points ahead of Jamie Dorey, and keeping in mind that drop points are now in effect, whereby every driver has been allowed to drop one round, their weakest score, but it is the case that Dan Skinner is the favourite, but can he hold on in a rivalry that has gone the span of every round? Adam Delmont, P5, he'll be looking to finish ahead of Robert Isunik, with Ed Lack, Peter Schell, Phil McDougall, and Alex Everett there, wrapping up your LMP2 Pro standings. And as we come to the LMP2 AM class, it is the case that last time out, after a little bit of discussion with regards to the pointage, it is the case that Paul Walton was confirmed as the winner of the LMP2 AM class, sponsored by IMB Raceware. Congratulations to Paul Walton for wrapping up the championship a round early with what was a difficult day for both him and also Stefan Vessels at the circuit, where Walton had a good number of incidents and a bit of bad luck on his side, whereas Vessels again found a good amount of bad luck, and it was the case that Vessels was just not able to get a break, and indeed a technical failure preventing him from taking to the grid, if I remember correctly, for the purposes of what was the feature race at the Nürburgring. But still, it is the case that those two are confirmed as finishing P1, P2 respectively, and now all eyes will be on the battle for P3, the best of the rest, between Paul Scott and Sam Holman. Paul Scott being the favourite with 16-point advantage, but Sam Holman looking to try and finish things on a high. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out between the two of them in practice, as we have behind them Paul Williams there in P5, and I think in fact that it's the case that Sam Holman may not be taking part tonight, and if so, that will confirm that Paul Scott is P3 by default. Paul Williams there in P5, looking to end the season on a strong note, with Richard Stanton and Jim Stanton, the two Stanton brothers behind him, P6, P7, and then Jonathan Collins, Baz Meacham, and Michael Price wrapping up the top 10, and then Mark Baker and Jack Wyborn outside of the top 10, completing the standings. We then come to the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, and this is where we've got one of our major championship contention points to wrap up tonight. It's Carmelo Mettello versus Matthew Hodges. The story, to simplify, Carmelo Mettello leads by a sizable margin here of what is 37 points over Matthew Hodges, and for Martello to be able to walk away from tonight the victor, all he has to do is finish 8th or higher. Matthew Hodges, meanwhile, has to take the win and, if possible, get the fastest lap in order to be able to snatch the championship at the close. But it is looking as though Martello has almost got both hands on the title already after what was a strong performance at the Nürburgring, and Matthew Hodges continuing that consistent approach but not quite able to deliver the wins compared to Martello. Will it go the way of Martello, or will Hodges spring one last surprise? Gavin Gardner there in P3. Of course, would love to finish P2 in the championship come the end of tonight, so watch out for the Verano Motorsport driver. He'll be looking to try and pip Hodges and Martello to the win, and then there's a sizable gap down to Matt Caruana in P4, who is only 11 points clear of Lee Horn. We're not expecting Caruana to potentially attend tonight, and if so, Lee Horn has an opportunity to jump into P4 come the close, with Tom Edmonds P6, Stefan Albanese P7, Edoardo Frankishin P8, Maurizio Marconi P9, and Vin Glenn on a roll after a double win last time at the Nürburgring. He'll be looking to try and end on a high and get another win, which will see him jump sizably up the ranks all the way up to approximately P7. Billy Fletcher, Callum Garton, William Fall, Alistair Kerr and Johnny Deschamps make up the top 15, and then Andrew Holmes and Maurizio Massi complete the standings there. And as we come into the GT3 Pro IMB Racewear class, it is the case that none of our drivers in the class took to the circuit last time out at the Nürburgring, and we haven't got any on the entry list so far for tonight. It may be the case that they've decided it's all wrapped up with Lucas Romano taking the win at Suzuka with 441 points to his name, but indeed a frantic class and a lot of battling throughout the season, and congratulations to all those drivers whether they take part tonight or they decide not to. It is the case they provide us with some fantastic racing action from start to finish. And as we come to our AM GT3 classes, starting with the GT3 Apex Racing Academy AM class, the story is all about Matt Emmons versus Nigel Stock. Now, to put it in perspective, Matt Emmons leading by 19 points after a Grand Slam at the Nürburgring circuit, picking up the perfect score. It is the case that for him to take away the championship honours tonight, he will need to finish in what will be 4th or higher to be able to guarantee it. Meanwhile, Nigel Stock needs to win, and it's the case that Emmons must finish 5th or lower for Nigel Stock to walk away the champion. It is the case that Emmons has just been able to stay ahead of Nigel Stock, but keep your eyes on the Mercedes driver of Stock. He will be gunning for it tonight. He will want the win as a minimum, because they are both right now joint on 6 wins apiece. And Stock, he was saying to me very briefly before getting into the car for the final practice session tonight, he would love to make it 7 wins for him and 6 for Emmons, just to get one over his rival. Matthew Addy, the best of the rest in P3 there on 371 points. That's effectively confirmed. And it's Sean Cranny-Swash and Darren Doherty who complete the top 5 there. Both drivers looking to vie for that P4 in the championship. With Darren Doherty, I've had it confirmed, will be taken to the circuit tonight due to personal circumstances changing, which we're very happy to hear that the Irishman's going to be here at Le Mans. Stuart Taylor, Jochen Seeger, Ben Payne, Morten Oosthuus and Jordan Pope make up the top 10, with Josef McManus, Scott McLean, Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, Alexander Batak, Mikael Andreasen and Callum Jenkins completing the standings. And as we come to the GT3 IMB Racewear AM class, the story is about our top 2. Tristan Dino Brega and Lorenzo Gualtieri from sister teams from Racing Team Astra. Dino Brega from the blue outfit, Gualtieri from the orange outfit. And we can see there it's the case that right now Dino Brega has extended his lead by 2 points last time out. He's now 9 points clear, and for him to take the crown, all he needs to do is finish second behind Gualtieri, if Gualtieri was to take the win. But it's close between the two of them, and one major mistake here tonight could send the championship in either direction. Elwyn Sykes in P3, he'll be taken to the circuit tonight, and it is a case on 319 points. He's in the clear mostly from Davide Favo, but he'll need a good result to confirm that P3 is best of the rest in class. Davide Favo P4 chasing after him, and Navarro de Bova unfortunately not taking part anymore in this series, but he'll be ending on a P5 as a minimum by the looks of things, with James Slate, Mark Sykes, Arjen Kregel, Kurt Van Hernack and Liam Tack completing the top 10, and then Chris Keenan, Gareth Mills and Mark Arrowsmith completing the standings. But now, before we come on to our rules for tonight, and indeed the circuit, the Teams Championship is sponsored by Mark Sykes Designs. We can see at the top it is Verano Motorsport, who are on the crest of momentum with 952 points to Next Gen Racing with Sam Casey's UK's 877. And for Verano Motorsport to take the crown, they must finish tonight with 2 cars in the top 3 as a minimum. That's all they've got to do, and you can imagine that Chris Daines will be looking to do that as a minimum within the LMP Pro class, and it will come down to Gavin Gardner and Sean Cranny-Swash to do the same within their respective GT3 classes. Meanwhile, it is the case for Next Gen Racing with Sam Casey's UK to swing things in their favour. They would need to finish within all 3 of the classes, so the LMP, the GT3 and the GT3 Pro. They would need to essentially have drivers who finish in the top 3 in all those. Rano would have to finish outside of the top 3, and then they could still away the championship crown. And it's the same for Racing Team Astra Blue, given how close it is, with only 7 points between second and third. We then have a further 12 points back to Next Gen Race now, 858, with Racing Team Astra Orange really the best of the rest in P5. And then as we fill up the top 10 with RP Motorsport Pro-Am, RD Simsport, CXR Project Black, Excite Racing, and DRS Esports LMS1, it is the case all of our top 10 really have pushed hard this season. But keep your eyes in P11 there, Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks. With William Fold taken to the circuit, and indeed some of his teammates, could they sneak their way into the top 10 at the close. Team Tech Rouge P12, challenged by DB1 P13, Team Racing Evans P14 and RP Motorsport Senior P15. A number of these teams have retired from the series and we're not expecting to take to the circuit tonight, but we'll go through them anyway out of fairness and for posterity. In 16th, challenged by DB2, DRS Esports LMS2 in P17, TGC Racing, Hilliard Esports and Hollerton Racing complete the top 20, and then outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about, Altitude Esports, Crest Autosport Ferrari, MRC Team, TGC Bottom Split Heroes, and last but not least, BRM. Well, those are the standings covered and the permutations that we need to look out for. And now we come to our circuit for tonight, which of course is the Circuit des 24 Heures du Mans, as located in the city of Le Mans in the region of Pays de la Loire in France. And it is the case that this circuit, made up of 33 corners, as seen from the circuit map provided us here by simracingwiki.com, is the ultimate endurance circuit. Our drivers will spend over 3/4 of a given lap full throttle, and they will have some major heavy braking zones to contend with, where it be the chicanes down the Mulsanne straight, alternatively Mulsanne corner itself at turn 14, the run all the way down towards Indianapolis at turn number 19, or the heavy braking zone that awaits them into the Ford chicanes right at the end after the Porsche and the Corvette curves. It is the case that this circuit tests car reliability, driver skill, and also driver endurance. 2 hours around here will feel like a lifetime over each and every lap, with the lap time will be just shy of 4 minutes for our GT3s and 3.5 minutes for our LMP2s, and you can imagine we could see a number of mistakes over the course of the duration. And well, we come from our circuit to the rules, and of course this being a feature round, we do change the rules very slightly, so we'll take you through them very quickly. Setup wise, this is a fixed setup series and that stays the same, but the difference tonight is that the LMP2 drivers shall be running the Le Mans iRacing at fixed setup with a fuel adjustment, and they've got full fuel tanks to start the race. Our GT3 drivers meanwhile shall be running the iRacing medium downforce endurance setup. In general, because this is a super endurance round, there is no qualifying session or sprint race, and double points shall be rewarded in the feature race, excluding fastest lap. So the maximum points haul from tonight is 52 points. The feature race, the grid shall be set by reverse Drivers' Championship order based on the latest championship standings going into tonight, so from round number 11. And the grid shall be separated into car classes, with the LMP2 starting ahead of the GT3s. Approximately a 5-second gap will be between the two classes. As for pit stops, there are 2 mandatory pit stops on the card for tonight. While drivers must take on fuel, they haven't got the fuel tanks to go to the end, and they must change all 4 tyres at least once over the 2 stops. So it's the case that a driver could choose to take all 4 tyres in one pit stop, or split it across the 2 pit stops, so 2 fronts and then the 2 rears. Each driver shall have 2 fast repairs available, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. And one other rule that's been asked of the drivers, albeit we haven't got it here, is that rolling through the Ford chicanes in the rolling start, our drivers have been asked to do the rolling start in single file, given how tight it is through the Ford chicanes, so we've got that to look forward to as well. But that's enough rules, regulations and introductions. I know what you're all here for, we're here for it as well, and that is the race in action. As we look to the circuit right now, we do look here to Matt Evans as he makes his way down the Mulsanne straight, one of the 2 major contenders in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class, and the NXTGEN Racing with Sam Case's UK driver in the build-up for tonight. As I tried to catch him as he's making his way down the pit lane to the Audi R8 LMS, he said to me very briefly that nerves have kicked in already, as the Audi is not liking the Porsche curves at all, and it gets very loose on the rear, particularly in the low grip scenario of this circuit, given the fact that the grip does evolve as the racing goes on, but particularly in the early stages of the race, that grip's not there, and that's something that Evans is very worried about. And to be fair, the run of form would indicate it. Every time Evans has raced here at Le Mans in the GT3 Championships hosted by NXTGEN Racing on iRacing, it has been the case that he's had a moment where it's gone horribly wrong at the Porsche curves. Will it happen again tonight? Well, of course, this is the 3rd time he's found himself leading or right in the fight for the championship crown within a class. Can the 3rd time be the charm, or will he miss out again? Well, I do hope for his sake. Indeed, I can't pick favourites, but he's able to achieve the outcome he so desperately desires tonight. But at the same time, we could say that a Nigel Stock as well, a driver who's really come a long way in the GT3 AM class since the early days of the GT3 Championships on NXTGEN Racing, in the fact that back in Season 1 he was really learning and developing. In Season 2 he decided to take a very different car. He took the Ford GT and made it work in the end and scored a good number of top 5 finishes and even a podium finish or 2. But now in that Mercedes AMG he's looking fast, he's looking ferocious, and you could argue that based on his development over the course of this season that he's just as good a contender as any to pick up that championship crown. So those two both deserve it, but who will be the winner? That will be the big question. position. But as he makes his way down the back straight towards Mulsanne corner right now, we do look from him to Paul Walton, of course, sealing the championship last time out in emphatic fashion. And as he makes his way on through what is the first of the Mulsanne chicanes there, it is the case the RD Sim Sport driver. He's got no pressure on him tonight with the fact that Stefan Vessel's losing out last time, but you can imagine he'll still want to beat the Racing Team Asher Blue driver, who as he parks up there in the run in towards Indianapolis, Stefan Vessel's of course be looking to do his best and end on a high. But as a number of our drivers now park up and jump back to the pits, we do say hello there to Katie Eames in the Facebook chat, who is wishing good luck to all of our drivers, and especially Matt Emmons, whose birthday it was yesterday. And indeed, Matt Emmons, a birthday man. He's turned just over 30 as I understand it, and it is the case he's still going young in soul and heart, and he's only a couple of years older than myself, but don't tell him that. But as he makes his way around, we also say hello to what is Mark Grant there in the Facebook chat, wishing Paul Walton good luck. And also we say hello in the YouTube chat to Nick Glenn, who is cheering on Vin Glenn tonight, albeit Vin Glenn there parked up in the pit lane. Look for the Deutsche Payment Esports BMW M4. It's in the centre of the camera, but the checker flag is out on this final practice session. It is time for us to form the grid for tonight's season finale. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through the grid. So it will be the case that starting on the front row for our LMP2 classes, it will be Phil McDougall who takes the field away, our leader, with Peter Herschel alongside. The 6R Project Black driver will be battling with Verano Motorsports driver down into the opening corners. Ed Lack and Robert DeSunic make up row number 2, with Jamie Dorey and Dan Skinner on row 3, and then Gaz Williams and Chris Daines, the 2 championship rivals in the LMP2 Pro class, line up on the 4th row. On row number 5, we have Paul Scott, joined by Stefan Vessel's. Only 3 of our LMP2 AM drivers here tonight, and Paul Walton will be starting off what will be row number 6, the LMP2 drive, before we have the gap to William Foyle, but he's technically on row 6, and he'll be leading away the GT3s in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class. Behind them, as we continue to make our way on down further, Vin Glenn and Stefan Albanese will make up your 7th row. Behind them, Lee Horn and Gavin Gardner, with Matthew Hodges and Carmelo Motella, the 2 championship protagonists in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy class, Pro class. They will be starting off your 9th row. On row number 10, we have Jochen Siegert, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, joined by Darren Doherty, the privateer, and row number 11, Sean Cranley-Swash and Matthew Addy, and then Nigel Stock and Matt Emmons on row number 12. And behind them, it'll be Davide Fava and Elway Sykes on row 13, and Lorenzo Gualtieri and Tristan Neobrega make up our last row, and do the 2 championship rivals in the GT3 IMB Raceway AM class. We're going toe-to-toe over the course of the racing tonight, all the way from that back row. How far will they come on through? That will be the question. As our field gets away, we now look back to the race info here, and indeed it is the case that as the timer is on the left-hand side, the timer is at the centre of your screen, and we have the timing tower on the left-hand side. You can see already how our LMP2 drivers are gradually spacing out from what is the rest of our drivers ahead of them. Behind them, I should say, and that being the GT3s. But as they come on through, it is the case that we do look to the blimp camera, and that's a wonderful perspective there of our LMP2s as they gradually make the way through the Porsche curves and into the Corvette curves behind the safety car. And of course, they will go from double file to single file in short order. And then we do have the look back to our GT3s, where William Foyle is maintaining for Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks, and indeed for our GT3 field, that 5-second gap to the LMP2s as they all make their way around at a maximum speed, or a target speed of 100 kilometers an hour. That's 62.13 miles per hour if you want to do it in the old Imperial measurement system. But it is the case as our GT3s come through. We've got more GT3s, to be fair, than we have LMP2s tonight, but not by a huge margin. It's roughly a 55 to 45% swing. But as they make their way around right now, I'm hearing that Davide Favo is starting from the pit lane, so he wasn't able to make the final countdown for the grid formation, but that could keep him safe, to be fair, starting from the pit lane. We'll have to wait and see. But as our drivers inch ever closer, we now look down to what is our LMP2 class, and in particular Phil McDougall, who gets ready to lead us away. And well, it'll be 2 hours of racing action from start to finish. Who will be our winners come the end of it? Time will tell. The strategy's in there as well. It is the case that the lights are low and we're ready to go, and it's for Phil McDougall to take us to the green. And it's lights out and away we go. Here's Phil McDougall, tries to get a good start. All the field come charge on through, but Ed Lack getting a much better start by comparison as they roar their way up through turn number 1 here and up towards the Dunlop chicane. And Ed Lack already up the inside there. Phil McDougall stalling at the start by comparison, and as they come charge up into the braking zone for the first time. Oh, goodness me, and that's somebody going completely sideways across the circuit. That's Peter Herschel. I'm not sure what's happened there, but also a spin for Jamie Dorey. And meanwhile, LMP2 AM drivers coming through here. Paul Scott still leading, but it's the case of Paul Walton trying to squeeze his way through as Chris Danes going slowly there. I wonder if Danes has been involved in that incident, but a little bit further back as they roll their way on through. Paul Walton getting ahead of Chris Danes. We look to our GT3s, and William Foe holds the lead of the GT3 class, as behind there is Lee Horn as they all come charge on through. Stefan Albanese has jumped to the pits. We're not sure what's happened to Albanese, but it is the case we have had a major incident in the LMP2 Pro class, which we'll try to understand and dissect shortly for you. But as they make their way onto the Mulsanne straight for the first time, I'll ask him. You're going to see that lead in what is the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class as he started off, and he does so and he continues to do so as they now make their way down the Mulsanne straight, and as they come rolling down now, this is where the slipstream kicks off. Now we start to see who's going to be fuel saving, who's going to be trying gaining places. Carmelo Martello immediately going on the offensive versus Matthew Hodges as they make their way towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and as they head on down into that braking zone, Martello on the inside, but he tucks in, he gets ahead, they roll their way on through, and as he comes charging through the chicane, he's gained the place on his rival. Remembering he just needs to finish arguably behind his rival by one place, and he would be firmly within the task of picking up that championship crown, but he won't want to do that. He'll want to take the win and seal the deal as they now make their way down towards the second of the chicanes. As they come on down here, we do have a driver going a bit slow. I think Phil McDougall's had an off track at the second of the chicanes, and he's lost out multiple positions. But looking from one CXR Project Black driver to another, we watch here as in the LMP2 Pro class, we've got Robert Asuni battling with Ed Lack as they head towards the braking zone for Mulsanne into the kink of 14. You're braking into the corner, turn 15 or Mulsanne corner as it's known in the moment. Oh, there's contact between Lack and Dasunik, and well, I think Dasunik, they're turning it a little bit prematurely, expecting Lack to disappear under braking, when it wasn't the case. He found that the Briton was there and ready waiting, and they clipped one another, but as they make their way back up to speed, Ed Lack stays ahead, but he has been in the wars, and now he's got to deal with the fact he's got Dan Skinner from Excite Racing trying to come on through here, and it's going to be round the outside to inside into Indianapolis. Who's going to be the braver of the two? That's the question, and it looks though Lack in the end gains the advantage, and Paul Walton tucked in close here, and the RD Simsport driver, the LMP2 AM driver, well, he's had a good start, and he's made his way past Paul Scott. Stefan Vessel's a bit further back. I think Vessel's may have been involved in that contact earlier on that we saw into the Dunlop chicane, or having to take evasive action due to that contact. We're not 100% clear, but what we are clear on right now is that Paul Walton has made some major gains, and there is Stefan Vessels. He's P3 in the LMP2 AM class, and right now as they make the way down towards what is the Porsche curves coming out of our Arnage, Stefan Vessels here taking, I think, the longer approach. I think he's playing the long game and trying to play it smart, but as they head into the corner, you can see Phil McDougall there staying to the wires and looking for that little peek to the inside, but he can't find it. And then Chris Danes right now just staying tucked in behind the pair of them, and he's got Robert Asuni behind him as they come charging past the stationary camera there. Wonderful camera shots they run through. It gives you a sense of the speed that the LMP2 Talara P217 machines are carrying, and as they roll their way into the Corvette curves, we can see how Phil McDougall really struggling through the Corvette curves, just not able to carry the momentum of his peers. And now as they make their way towards the Ford chicanes, will we see a potential overtake attempt? No, Chris Danes is patient. He waits. He knows that it's 2 hours, it's not 2 minutes, and therefore he's got to be careful. Indeed, all the drivers have, they won't want to pick up any damage if they can afford it. But meanwhile, Paul Walton going slowly there. I think he's had a slowdown after the Ford chicanes, but he cut the track limits there, and as he makes his way back up to speed, we'll take you through the order after one lap. It's Ed Lack leading in the LMP2 class, followed by Dan Skinner in P2, Gaz Williams in P3. Then we have the AM leader of Paul Scott in P4, being chased by Paul Walton P5. Stefan Vessels P6 as they make their way down through the opening sequence of corners. Behind him, Phil McDougall here, battling it with Chris Danes. Chris Danes goes up the inside to outside line as they roll through just before Ted Trujan gets the move done. Then we have a switch position then for P7. Behind him in P9, Robert Asunik, after a good start, it's become unfounded with that contact with Ed Lack into Mulsanne. Peter Shelf completes the top 10 in the LMP2 class. Meanwhile, in the GT3s, we have William Fogle, who continues to lead here ahead of Lee Horn, following behind in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class. Then it's Bing Glenn, P3, Carmelo Martello behind him in P4. Martello making great gains as they come rolling on through. And then we have Matthew Hodges in at P5, followed by Jochen Seeger, P6 of the GT3s. And effectively, he is your GT3 Apex Racing Academy AM leader ahead of Sean Cranny Swash, who's in pursuit behind, but there's a gap opening. Darren Doherty following behind there in P8 of the GT3s, followed by Gavin Gardner. The Bruno Motorsport driver is definitely trying to put some pressure on here. And then we have Lorenzo Gautier, who completes the top 10 pro GT3s. He is leading the GT3 IMB Raceway and class ahead of Tristan Nobrega, who's a bit further back. And where is Nobrega, I hear you ask? Well, here he is as he makes his way down Mulsanne himself, but he's taking a very gradual start to this race. But speaking of gradual starts, it's the case one driver who's not made a gradual start. He's just got himself up into P2 in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. That's Vin Glenn, and a bit further back we can see the battle growing there between Darren Doherty, who's found his way past Sean Cranny Swash under brake into the first of Mulsanne chicanes, and Sean Cranny Swash goes a little bit wide there through the chicane. That cost him dearly, but meanwhile we do look back up to Carmelo Martello versus Vin Glenn here. The two Pro GT3 drivers exchanging places, and in fact it looks like Vin Glenn's been doing a slowdown there. He's going very slowly down the second part of the Mulsanne straight, and I mean it's the case the Deutsche Pound esports driver has been caught just cutting the track limits a little bit too much, and of course when you cut those track limits you do then have to give the position back, indeed give the time back as we refer to in iRacing, and Vin Glenn there has been caught out. We'll wait to see whether he can now get back onto Matthew Hodges, and I would say he can given the pace he has been showing. He's a very fast driver, there is no doubt about that given the pace he's shown since his late introduction to this series. But speaking of what was early moments in the racing, it is the case we do need to take a look back at that incident into the Dunlop chicane. And now we have the opportunity to take a look back at what happened to Peter Herschel in particular, who we saw going sideways across the circuit. This was at the start here, and oh goodness me, and that was contact with Jamie Dorey coming into the corner. And well, what happened to Stefan Vessels and all this? And Stefan Vessels got caught up as well in the contact. So it's the case that Vessels, that explains what's happened to Stefan Vessels. We take another look back here from the onboard of Stefan Vessels, who's going to come up to this instant early on, and as they make their way into the braking zone there, so he's got a lot of smoke in front of him. There's Jamie Dorey, who's spinning across the circuit trying to turn the car around. And well, what's happened to Vessels? In fact, well, he wasn't involved in any contact there. Well, Vessels wasn't in the contact, so who was? That's the big question. Well, I think it may be the case that Chris Daines was caught up in that, but Stefan Vessels just having to be cautious in the end. He didn't receive any contact from Jamie Dorey from what we could see there, so my apologies, that got that one a bit wrong. But it is the case that Jamie Dorey and Peter Herschel coming together, and that disrupted the flow for a good number of the LMP2 drivers behind as we now return to the pictures. And we see Nick Glenn there saying that Vin Glenn is 15 years old. Well, definitely a very fast driver for a youngster. I must say that I'm envious of his driving abilities. He's almost half my age, I kid you not. But as he makes his way through the Porsche curves right now, the German driver really looking good so far, hunting after Matthew Hodges once again. As he does so here, it is the case that we look from Vin Glenn to you can see it here. Goes a bit sideways coming into the Corvette curves. It is the case the rear steps out, and a good number of drivers were mentioning this in the driver's briefing room about the risk of cars going sideways through the Corvette curves and the Porsche curves due to low levels of grip, particularly in the GT3 class where they don't have as much downforce as the LMPs, and we saw that from the Team Tetra Rouge driver Siga as he makes his way into the Ford chicanes now. And could we potentially see some instance? That will be the thing that some drivers will be preying on, others will not be hoping for, of course, and time will tell in that regard. But as they make their way across the timeline, we are going to take a look back at what happened to Stefan Albanese at the start of the race. He had to jump to the pit, and I do believe he's made his way back out into the circuit, albeit it's a sizable portion of the lap down now as we take a look back. So this was at the start of the race. You can see Albanese then, the DRS Esport LMS2 Audi. He's got Lee Horn behind in the next gen racing Audi. And as they made their way into the brake, oh, goodness me. Now, Albanese there, did he just seize on the brakes, or was there contact with Lee Horn? We're going to take another look at that. As we ride on board here with Lee Horn, you can see he's so close to the back of Albanese. Now, was there a shove? No, there was not, so just on cold tyres, and Albanese getting it wrong, and Vin Glenn, they're going side by side with Will Foyle and trying to find a way on through. Well, that explains what happened to Albanese, just got loose under braking on those cold tyres. And as we return to the live pictures here, we look to Sean Cranley Swash, who is in this trio of the GT3 Apex Racing Academy AM drivers here behind, and that's Gavin Gardner, his teammate, the pro driver. And right now I think Gardner's just trying to stay with his teammate rather than trying to get in the way of him as they make their way through what is the first part of the Mulsanne straight, and through the first Mulsanne chicane. And as they roll the way through, Cranley Swash going a little bit deep there, a bit of understeer in that Lamborghini. We don't normally see understeer in the Lamborghini, we normally see the opposite, oversteer. But he's found a way to get it to understeer, and I don't think he's too happy about that as he makes his way now down the second portion of the straight. We're hearing that Davide Faro's had a moment, and hold up a second, Nigel Stock as well has dropped all the way to the back of what is the GT3 Apex Race Academy class. We'll talk more about that in a second. You can see here Gavin Garner on the right of your pitch. He's out of line as he tries to get the move done on his teammate Cranny Swash, and indeed it is the case that Cranny Swash decides not to fight it. Gavin Garner gains track position, he doesn't gain class position, and gets the run on Darren Doherty here as they make the way out of the chicane and now down towards Mulsanne Corner. And it does seem as though Darren Doherty getting a poor run, and now will Garner have enough straight line speed here. He'll have the toe. You can see it in front. It's going to give him a little bit of slipstream into the run, into the kink. And as they roll the way down, now they get ready to go into that heavy braking zone, a very tricky braking zone, because effectively you turn into a corner, and as soon as you straighten out the car, you've got to slam on the brakes immediately. And Gavin Garner gets the pass done on Darren Doherty as he now chases after Jochen Siegert here. And of course, this will help his teammate of Cranny Swash behind him out to a degree for the simple reason he'll be disrupting the flow of the AM driver train. As we see that Jochen Siegert peeling to the inside as he makes his way in the run all the way down to Indianapolis. And as they swing about here, he can make one weave in the straight. He can't make excess weaves, of course, to the rule book. But as they come on down right now, it is a situation whereby Gavin Garner closing up to the back of Jochen Siegert. Will he be able to go for the move? He doesn't look like it's Indianapolis. He's going to back out here. And speaking of another driver who was looking for the move, but he backed out, Lee Horn, who is the focus of our cameraman's attention for Next Gen Racing with Sam Casey's UK. He's all over the back of Carmelo Mettello here as they make the way out of Arnage and now head up towards the Porsche curves. But we do look from them to what happened to Nigel Stock. He had an off track earlier on, he had to jump to the pit, and here's what happened. Well, the car's crabbing there, and what we mean by crabbing, it's not able to drive in a straight line. So Nigel Stock was involved in an instant before that. Was this the instant as he was making his way down into the, oh goodness me, and is that Matt Evans who's coming into the back of Nigel Stock? I think that is, and if so, well, that is going to be a tail in the championship right now, because it's the two championship rivals. And well, I know Emmons wouldn't want to take his rival out at the end of the day, but then it was the case that as he made the contact, well, Emmons has been able to drive on with a damaged car. Meanwhile, Nigel Stock has had to jump to the pit, and well, Emmons, I think, is trying to drive it back to the pit, but now that is going to be one that's going to go to the steward's room after the race, and it'll be interesting to hear how that plays out. But Emmons was able to make it back to the pit lane, and now it is the case that I think for him, he'll be driving with a cloud over his head, which is what the steward's going to say post-race. Well, the thing for Emmons, all he can focus on is taking the win, and then just waiting to see what time or place penalties given to him. But keep in mind, of course, as we spoke about earlier, it is the case that Emmons does not need to finish directly behind Nigel Stock. He just needs to finish in full for higher to guarantee the championship. Unless there is a huge penalty doled out, it may be the case that he grabs it by default, but we'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, as we have returned to the live pitch, we see Lee Horn here. He's been passed by Vin Glenn, and now he's looking to try and hold on versus what is Hodges. As we see there, Vin Glenn coming from the inside there of Carmelo Martello, and Martello going very slowly in the run to Tetra Rouge. I think it's the case that Martello finds himself out of sequence. Oh, goodness me, Lee Horn there, battling with Matthew Hodges as they made it free wide for a brief moment as they come onto the Mulsanne straight, and as they come charging down. This time it is the case Lee Horn tucking in behind Vin Glenn briefly, then Vin Glenn peels to the natural racing line. Lee Horn tries to get back into the sequence, but he can't make it line the stern because he has Matthew Hodges just there on his outside, and as they roll away under braking here, it'll be Hodges trying to go around the outside to inside, and the CXR Project Black driver, I think, has got this time, but he loses the rear slightly, and Lee Horn has to lift off. There's a small amount of contact, but these guys are literally driving on the limit as they make the way now down towards the second chicane, and you can see they're all tucking in behind Matthew Hodges here, and now Lee Horn peels out, Carmelo Martello behind him. The two Audi drivers are trying to slipstream their way past. Will they have enough momentum? It's going to be Hodges on the outside to inside into the second chicane. Lee Horn stays there on what would be his left-hand side, right-hand side of the picture, and as they make the way into braking, Lee Horn gains the position, and he takes it back, but now they'll have another long run, of course, because they've got to run down towards the Mulsanne hairpin, and as they head on down, it is the case that Hodges now will try to use the slipstream once again. We ride on board here with Matthew Hodges, the Ferrari 488 driver, as he gains in the toe. Of course, this Ferrari does very well in the toe, and as they come charging down towards that break, he's done a long way to go. He's going to have the inside run here before the kink, and I do suspect Lee Horn's going to have to back out. They'll battle under braking into the corner. Lee Horn on that outside, looking for that potential run round on the cutback. He finds neither. Matthew Hodges holds him at bay, and now Carmelo Martello will try and come on through to gain the position as well, but will he be able to do so as they head down towards Indianapolis? Well, the theory would say that Martello right now should have it quite straightforward, but then again, the fact they're both in the draft of Matthew Hodges, this battle goes on. Vinglen is allowed to break off into distance. Vinglen in the foreground here, camera. Hodges on the left-hand side in this side-by-side moment. We can see there Martello bump drafting Wesley Horn forward, and they find their way through the two Audi drivers past the Ferrari driver, and as they roll away into Indianapolis in the end, Carmelo Martello gains a place at the expense of Hodges, and Lee Horn gains 2 for the price of 1. But how long will it be before they come back together again? And Vinglen, keep in mind, is only 8 tenths of a second up the road. This battle is going to go on for some time, I suspect, until somebody gives in, and none of the 4 there want to give in right now as they make the way down towards the Porsche curves. But speaking of a driver who won't be willing to give in, he had a spin earlier on by the sounds of things, and that's Matthew Addy here, currently P4 in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class, and well, he has had a major moment, and let's take a look back at what happened. This was in the run up towards the Dunlop chicane, turns 2 and 3, and as he came into the braking zone here, well, that's pretty normal. He's got a bit wide though, and the rear has snapped around as he's trying to bring the car around with too much momentum. I think in fact the brake seized there, and he had to lift off the brakes coming into the chicane, and that's why he understood so wide. He just carried too much speed. He couldn't get the car to retard in time, and therefore Matthew Addy's had a spin, but he's in P4 in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy AM class, and he will push on here with Matt Evans and Nigel Stott the best part of 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes behind him respectively. And what we look from Matthew Addy to Darren Doherty here, who right now chasing after Sean Cranley Swash. He's in P3 of the class, meanwhile Sean Cranley Swash is in P2 of the AM class as they roll their way through the 4 chicanes once again. But you can see there's Lorenzo Gualtieri behind, and right now the GT3 IMB Raceway AM class leader, he will be worried for racing Team Astra Orange about the fact he has got Tristan Di Brega creeping closer and closer, and on that last lap Di Brega took 2 seconds out of Gualtieri. He is flying right now as the Ferrari driver for racing Team Astra Blue, and at the same time he knows all he has to do is finish 1 place behind Gualtieri. Whether Gualtieri wins or he comes 2nd or 3rd, all Di Brega needs to do is finish directly behind him, and he's guaranteed the championship crown. So as he makes one through right now, I think Di Brega's playing it smart and being sensible and keeping his rival within arm's reach in case he has the opportunity to go hunting after that win. But as we do a look here from the champion-elect to champions battling it out further still, it is the case we look back here to the battle in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class between Hodges, Horn and Martello. These 3 battling for that P3 in the class, and right now, of course, Matthew Hodges will need Carmelo Martello to essentially have to retire from this race, given that we only have 7 drivers in the class. We would have needed 9 for him to have an opportunity to win it with Martello out on circuit. But of course, nobody wants retirements here. Nobody prays for retirements. Of course, they just pray for good and fantastic racing, which we're seeing so far. And it is the case that Matthew Hodges holds the position, but Lee Horn getting out of sorts there and actually losing a lot of speed in the run through the first of the moles and chicane. So now Hodges versus Martello, the billing on the top of the bill. It is the case they'll be battling as they run their way down towards the 2nd of the moles and chicanes, and it is the case that Hodges is putting the car right in the middle of the road, making that Ferrari nice and wide, and Martello simply saying, okay, you can do that, I'll just tuck in behind, there's no pressure on me, and I'll look elsewhere on the lap, given we're not even half an hour in. We're only 18 minutes into this race. It's a 2-hour race, of course. And right now, Matthew Hodges in that P3 position. Well, he can't take the crown right now in the pro class, but it will be the case. He'll want to win and take Martello down in terms of taking the win off of him. And that'll be something that he'll have in his back pocket come the season conclusion. But we'll have to wait to see whether he can achieve that, because Martello is looking very fast right now behind Hodges as they roll their way into the Mulsanne corner. But it's been one of our closest battles on circuit as they come on through. Elsewhere around, it is the case in the LMPs. We do have a bit of a cross-class battle building at the moment. That's between Robert DeSunic, Stefan Vessels and Paul Scott. We'll cut to that very shortly, but we just stay with Martello and Hodges as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. And as they make their way on down, it is the case that right now Martello, again, staying close, but not going for the move. And I wonder where Martello has decided that he's now going to go into a bit of a fuel saving mode before that first pit stop. Now, in terms of when we typically expect the pit stops to occur, it's the case in these 2-stop races, these feature races, we expect the first pit stop to occur somewhere in the region of around 35 to 50 minutes into the race, and then the second stop to occur somewhere in the region of about 70 to 100 minutes into the race. 100 minutes being a major extension, normally 70 to 90 minutes, but we've had outliers in the past. And speaking of outliers there, Lee Horn, we're not going to miss that. The fact he almost managed to creep it into the exit wall there on Arch Corner. He's pushing hard. It is the Briton to hunt down Martello, but the gap's 3.6 seconds, and gradually expanding. But it could be the case that right now we do have Martello thinking about that fuel saving and how he can get the jump in the first stop. But now we look to our LMP2 class drivers here, and in particular you can see Stefan Vessels, who has got behind him Phil McDougall, putting a lot of pressure on, and that is Robert Sunak in front, who has made his way past the pair as they make the way down towards Mulsanne corner. They've cleared the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and as they make their way down the final portion of the Mulsanne straight into the self-titled corner, it is the case that the South African here is quite a way off of Paul Scott and Paul Walton in this battle, but he could be doing a lot of fuel saving here, which will enable him to gain some time on the leaders in the class, particularly Paul Walton, who is the best part of 14 seconds up the road. But as we look to the chats here, we do say hello in the Facebook chat to Wendy Walton cheering on Paul Walton, also to Titan Taylor in the Twitch chat asking us how it's going. Well, the racing's going fantastic, and I'm doing well here in the commentary box. Stuart, how about yourself? And then Mark Arrowsmith in the YouTube chat saying, gutted I missed the last round. Indeed, we're gutted we can't see you in the VR46 Ferrari there, Mark, but I hope you're doing well, and good evening to you as well. But as our drivers continue the way on around here, it's the case the LMP class has definitely opened up in terms of the gaps between our drivers. Meanwhile, in the GT3s, we've also got gaps opening up as we're here. Davide Favo has had a moment. Oh, goodness me. Now, this is what we were talking about earlier with regards to drivers getting it wrong at the Porsche and the Corvette curves. And Davide Favo just having to park off circuit in front of the marshal's post to let everybody through. He's got a whole roster of LMPs. In fact, he's got the whole LMP2 field coming on through, and he won't want to reverse the car out. But what we'll do in the meantime is take a look at what happened. As he made his way into the Porsche curves here, coming into the first right-hander, the car just snapped completely on him. He tried to bring it under control, but when he sees the brakes on there, it's the case it threw the car the other way, but he's been able to take it off the circuit, and that's what's happened to the Racing Team Astra Orange driver as we look back to live pictures, and now he's back up to speed, albeit it's taken him some time to get the car back onto, so it took 19 seconds there to let the LMP2s through, but to be fair, credit to him, good sportsman there and showing awareness of the cars coming on through. As he makes his way now down towards the Ford chicanes, it is the case we do look from Favo to Matthew Hodges here, who continues to be in that battle with Carmelo Martello. They have fallen 4.5 seconds behind Vin Glenn. You can see off in the distance there briefly in the camera shot the German driver in P2 in the class. As they make their way on down, we can see here a bit further back, we've got Lee Horn under pressure from Gavin Gardner. Gardner on the left of the picture, Lee Horn on the right. Lee Horn being the Audi driver, Gardner the Ferrari driver. And it is the case that Lee Horn stays ahead for the time being, but these two GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro drivers going toe-to-toe here, and it is the case that Lee Horn seems to be falling a bit backwards towards Gardner, not able to quite match the pace of Martello or Hodges, and now they have the whole GT3 and Apex Racing Academy field behind them, as led by Jochen Seeger here, who has got Sean Cranny, Swash, Chase Arthur, and Darren Dottie only 2 seconds further back, and these guys right now under huge amounts of pressure to perform, particularly with Matthew Addy, Emmons, and also Nigel Stock, also having very difficult races at the start, and therefore putting themselves out of initial contention for the win here today. A major points up for grabs, of course. 52 points on the table, 50 for the win, 2 for the fastest lap. Well, there's been a double points round to match up with the points we'd normally see awarded for the 2 races in our non-feature race rounds. But as we can see here, you can see it definitely keeping close. In fact, sorry, I should say non-super endurance rounds rather than feature races to avoid any confusion. But no confusion here that you can see it wants to come through. He looks to the inside here as they make their way down the straight towards Indianapolis. It'll be an inside to outside run here, but you can see he carries a lot of momentum in, and the BMW M4 driver, we know that M4 is very fast on the straights, particularly with regards to its top speed, and now as they head down towards our large corner, you can see how Gavin Gardner there and Sean Cranny Swash really tripping over one another thanks to the Oppenseger making that pass. And I think that could be quite a critical pass for the BMW driver, given the fact he's now got one of his alternate GT3 class peers between himself and his main rival in that battle for the lead. Albeit we've got a lot of time to go in this race still. It's not over yet by any shot, but it is the case right now. You can see it definitely showing his mettle, and he's going to look up the inside here, and Lee Horn is going to be very close as they make the way on through, but they give one another enough breathing room. But you can see it putting that pressure on, and well, we look from the gearbox here of Lee Horn as they roll the way through the Porsche curves and head up towards the Corvette curves, and it's the case that Lee Horn here under a huge amount of pressure to keep all these GT3 drivers at bay. You can see how they're all stacking up on top of one another as they roll their way out of the curves and now down towards the Ford chicanes. Goodness me, how this will play out in practice, as we can see that a little bit of a peak attempt from Lorenzo Gualtieri. It is the case that our GT3 IMB race where Andrew's caught up to this. They've got Darren Doherty behind him, also Tristan Dino Brega. They're all coming together here, and it's Lee Horn right at the head of this GT3 line. And as they make the way across the timeline onto what will be their 7th tour of the circuit under racing conditions, you can imagine now that Lee Horn will be thinking, come on Jochen, just hold him up and let me get away. Jochen, however, may have other ideas. That's Jochen Seeger to you guys and myself. As we see here, the Team Tetra Rouge driver goes a little bit deeper into the Dunlop chicane. He's actually going to lose a lot of momentum as he makes his way out of turn number 3, and as he rolls his way under the Dunlop bridge, it is the case. You can see there Sean Cranley's trying to get his way alongside his own teammate here, and it's a very difficult one for the Rhino Motorsport drivers because they will want to get 3 drivers in the top 2, or sorry, the top 3 I should say, in order to seal that championship and the team's championship. But at the same time, it is the case that Sean Cranley Swash here wants to get past Gavin Garner because he wants to take the fight for the lead of the class early when he feels he's got the pace. But right now, the person who's stopping him is his own teammate, arguably, as they make the way down the straight. Albeit, to be fair, they're probably also trying to work some slipstream fuel saving into the mix here, but it's a tricky one. But speaking of tricky situations here, Gavin Garner's going to try and go around the outside of you can see it's Ferrari versus BMW, but you can see that M4 so strong down these straights. Gavin Garner had the toe, but they're still side by side into the first of 2 chicanes down the Mulsanne straight, and as they exit out the corner here, they give one over just enough room, and you can see it still stays ahead. Such is the power of that 6-cylinder 3-litre engine in the BMW, and as they make the way down the second part of the straight right now, it is the case that we can see Sean Cranley Swash now getting in the mix. He's side by side with his teammate, but Lorenzo Gualtieri's also coming through here. The GT3 IME race where AM class leader, and he needs to win this race and make sure that Tristan Nina Brega finishes 3rd or lower in order to take the championship crown. They make the way 3 wide into the Mulsanne chicane part 2, and as they come on in there, Lorenzo Gualtieri in the inside line, he backs out completely because he knows he can't afford to be involved in any major incident, otherwise he will lose out that attempt at the championship crown immediately. So now he goes again, and this time he'll have the momentum, he'll have the ability to get alongside Gavin Gardner as they make the way all the way down towards the Mulsanne corner, turn 15. And as they get ready to battle it out on the brakes here, Lamborghini on the left, Ferrari on the right, they head on in, and you can see that Gardner backing off, lifting off the throttle while looks to do some fuel saving and tuck himself back into the line with his teammate Sean Cranley Swash just behind. But this battle between the classes here, and indeed the overall, what would be the effective overall lead of that P16 position on circuit, we often see it holding on to it, is one that's not going away, and it just seems to keep amplifying in terms of the intensity of this battle between what is 7 drivers here in this long line. In fact, 6 drivers now that I adjust my eyes, and it is the case that Lorenzo Gualtieri looking up the inside here into Indianapolis. Can he get it done? No, he cannot. What about Tristan Dino Brega? He goes up the inside there. Oh, but Darren Doherty on the inside to outside line, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver makes the pass there. A critical pass it could be as he inches closer to his championship rival. But as they make the way into Van Arge, of course, getting into this pack is a very risky business. It only takes 1 driver to miss their braking point, or for you to miss your braking point, and it's all over. And Dino Brega will know about this. Indeed, he will have been briefed about this by his team manager as they make the way up towards the Porsche curves. They'll all be looking to survive, but as they make the way through, they're also looking to thrive, and that's the key thing. They want the win within their respective classes, and well, one driver who knows about that, of course, Stefan Vessels in the LMP2 AM class, as the Racing Team Astra Blue driver here has closed up to the back of Paul Scott. Paul Walton, by comparison, is opening up the lead. He's got the lead up to what is 16 seconds on Stefan Vessels, 15.5 on Paul Scott, and as they make the way down towards the Porsche curves here on the back straight, it is the case that Vessels is inching closer with each and every lap compared to the Next Gen Racing driver, but it's not enough now as they head on through. And we say hello there in the Facebook chat to Deborah Grant, who is cheering on at Paul Walton. And indeed, as Vessels rolls his way up past there, what is Mark Sykes, my apologies, Elwin Sykes, who we haven't seen too much of, but here he is. The Racing Team Astra orange driver from South Africa, who runs very wide there, coming out the Corvette curves, having a difficult day at the office, currently P3 in the GT3 IMB race where AM class. It is the case that right now Elwin Sykes is trying to keep his head down and deliver as best as he can. But as they make the way through, we do look from the drivers in the LMP2 class of what is Paul Scott and also Stefan Vessels. They go on to another lap. So the driver who's leading the class is already on to said lap. that is Paul Walton here as he makes his way in the run to Tetra Rouge corner. And right now the RD Sim Sport driver looking very composed, very compact and very happy. He is leading overall in terms of the LMP2 class, and also he's leading over in terms of all drives out of the circuit, and he has a sizable gap to Ed Lack, who you can see a bit further back there. The gap between the two of them about 3 seconds as it currently stands, but that gap could change at any moment as they cut their way through the GT3 class traffic. This is the first time that our LMP2s have to make their way through the thick of the traffic, and you can see here that long chain of GT3 cars as they make their way into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. And this is horrible for our LMP2 drivers because they've got to try and negotiate this in a manner that's safe but doesn't cost them time, and they'll be worrying about that for definite as they make their way down. You can see there Paul Walton literally swinging from side to side. They're literally cutting in and out of the line of GT3s. He's got to be careful of that, of course, the excessive weaving, but he's doing it to make his way down towards the second Mulsanne chicane as the leader of this pack. And as they head in towards the braking zone very shortly, you can see how much Ed Lack has closed up there. Lack now only 7 tenths behind and well within the draft of the RD Sim Sport driver. As we can see, Walton there not having the exit he would like out the second of the Mulsanne chicanes because he had Lee Horn in front of him. And now as they make the way down towards Mulsanne corner, could Lack potentially look for the move for the overall lead of the LMP2 class as they head on down. And with half an hour of this race complete, we've still got 90 minutes to go and plenty of battles on the horizon for certain as they make their way into that braking zone. No change this time, but to be fair, they do have one more long run in towards Indianapolis corner, which I think that's where Lack will look for the move, because if he was to pass into Mulsanne corner, that would give Paul Walton the opportunity to come back in quick succession. As in the rear of your picture there, that is, I think that's Sean Cranley Swash, who's gone for a spin at Mulsanne corner. And what's happened there to Sean Cranley Swash? Let's take a look. Making his way under braking. Does he miss his braking zone? He comes up through in the rear, steps out there under braking, and he ends up putting the car into the gravel, and he has to park the car, in fact, given that the car's coming on through. That's Stephen Vessels and Paul Scott coming on through. They've traded places, but Sean Cranley Swash having to be patient there and let everybody come on through before returning to the races. Now he'll drop back to P3 in the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy class behind Darren Dotley and Jochen Seeger, who are much further up the road. And as we are looking from Sean Cranley Swash here to what is Jochen Seeger, we can see it is the case the Team Tetra Rouge driver caught between a rock and a hard place. He's got Lorenzo Gualtieri ahead of him, and he's got behind him there, that's Gavin Garner, as Robert Cynic in the LMP2 comes roaring on through. Exchanging places here, of course, across different GT3 classes, and that's the difficulty. They've got to remember who they're racing versus who they're not racing and try to play their cards right. As we see Stefan Vessels here cutting his way past what is his teammate of Tristan Di Nobrega as they make their way into the Porsche curves, and as they do, Vessels having to back out there with Paul Scott right behind him, and we ride on board with Paul Scott as he tries to hunt after the second place driver in the LMP2 AM class. Paul Scott being P3 in said class as they make their way out to the Corvette curves. Oh, goodness me, Stefan Vessels there almost losing the rear on corner exit, but bringing it back together. Some very quick reactions, and now Paul Scott not close enough to go over the move. You see Vessels there. Oh my good lord! And it is the case that Paul Scott in the end doesn't know where to go, nor did Vessels. Oh, you can see it by the looks of things. Oh, then Vessels has got it wrong on the exit of the Ford chicanes. It is the case that Vessels has gone to the gravel, but that whole sequence there was on a knife edge with Vessels, and you can see I'm not sure of who was going to take the lead through the corner, and in the end Vessels managed to get on through but was unsettled through the second chicane, and Paul Scott has gained the position as we've got LMP2s into the pits as well. But we take a look back at what happened there. That was an absolute moment which I think Vessels will want to forget very quickly. Coming on through the first Ford chicane, it was looking good then as he rolled his way for the second chicane. He's just carried a bit too much speed into the first one, but look at that drift, to be fair, ladies and gentlemen. He may have gone off circuit, but he kept it out of the wall by the smallest of margins, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver doing very well to keep it out of the wall and carry on racing. But I think it's the case that Paul Scott will be grateful for the position back, but that was definitely one that would probably have made the hairs on the back of everybody's necks in those cars raise considerably as they made their way down the Mulsanne straight now. But at the same time, with some drivers coming into the pits, This will, of course, mix up the order. Chris Daines has already come into the pits for the first time. He's a bit further back here. We've also got not Dan Skinner behind him. Dan Skinner's ahead of him and yet to pit. We've got Robert De Sunic, who's also taken a pit stop in the LMP2 class. He's in the LMP2 Pro class, of course. And we also have Phil McDougall, who's made his way on out. And Jamie Dorey, I do believe, is in the pits. He's had to retire from this race due to an incident early on the race, which is, well, we saw the incident was into turns 2 and 3 into the Dunlop chicane. And I think after that, he's had to box the car. And in the end, the team have not been able to get the car fully repaired. And so they've had to retire it. So he is our first retirement of today. One retirement out of 28 drivers on circuit right now. Well, indeed, 28 drivers who took to the circuit, I should say. But meanwhile, look, from our LMP2 driver, Phil McDougall, back to our GT3s and to, in particular, Darren Doherty, who right now the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy driver chasing after the pro driver in the GT3 class, Apex Racing Academy, of Gavin Gardner. And that's Tristan Dienenberger ahead of the pair of them. Dienenberger has found his way past them. And now as they make the way down towards Mulsanne Corner, you can see that Dienenberger being very safe with his approach to each and every pass, just taking it easy, not doing anything drastic. So at the end of the day, he's not the one who needs to worry about winning this race. The one who needs to worry is this man, Lorenzo Gualtieri, in the GT3 IMB Raceway AM class. He needs to win, and for Dienenberger to finish P3 or lower in order to be able to take the crown from his rival in the sister Racing Team Astra team come the checkered flag. But right now it's looking to be going Dienenberger's way, as we see here Gualtieri doing everything he can to find a way past Lee Hall. And when I did have the chance to speak to Elwyn Sykes from Racing Team Astra Orange briefly in the build-up to tonight, he was saying that both Dienenberger and Gualtieri had an all-in battle between each other last time out at the Nürburgring, and they'll be looking to give it their all once again here tonight, both of them wanting to take that championship crown. And there's hoping for action between the two drivers, but they're not wanting to see any team drama between Racing Team Astra Orange and Racing Team Astra Blue, given the primarily South African outfit, a very strongly knitted team in terms of the relationships between the drivers. And well, we do hope that we see them battle one another later on, but not come to blows. That's the last thing we want to see. Indeed, we don't want scenes that could mimic, say, the finale of the 1990 Formula 1 Championship between Ayrton Senna and what was Alain Prost, or what happened the year after as well. But time will tell if we do see some sparks fly. But in the meantime, talking of what is sparks flying, it is the case having just set a personal best lap of the race, and then coming on in the next time round, it's Ed Lackey's in the pit along with Gaz Williams, and there's Paul Walton as well. And Paul Walton will be looking to try and come back out ahead of Ed Lack, as meanwhile we've got our GT3s coming on through, more LMPs coming into the pit lane as they all make the way on down. That's also Paul Scott. We've also got Peter Herschel, and we've got Stefan Vessels coming in, all for their first scheduled stop here at what was the 35-minute mark. And well, we see Paul Walton leaving the pit lane already, and as he exits out here, he'll be the first driver to do so. How far behind will Ed Lack be? Well, there's Ed Lack leaving, but notice Gaz Williams is coming out behind as well. He's closed up quite a bit to Ed Lack through the pit stop. None of them taking tyres, only taking on fuel, and it is the case they all go racing once again. As they make the way up to speed, we do see Chris Daines coming on through here, and of course the Verano Motorsport driver running P3 in the LMP2 Pro class. He's hunting down Gaz Williams and Ed Lack. The gap from himself to Ed Lack being only 3.5 seconds right now. He is on the charge. Meanwhile, we look from him to Paul Scott, who's coming out the pits P2 in the LMP2 AM class, and Stefan Vessel's not too far behind. The gap between the two of them, 6 seconds as they make the way up towards the Dunlop chicane. And as they do, between the two of them is Peter Herschel, the driver who went sideways across the chicane on the opening lap. And as they make the way up to speed now, it is the case they go racing once again. We look from them to a battle that is continuing in the GT3 class, and well, if you said is it Hodges and Martello, you guessed it right, because here they both are. Matthew Hodges running P3 in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class, and behind him that is Carmelo Martello. And as they make their way down into the braking zone here for the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, these two have been inseparable, but I get the feeling that Martello is doing a lot of fuel saving behind Hodges here and is settling for P3 at the moment in this race, given the fact that Vin Glenn is the best part of 7.7 seconds up the road from the pair of them, and then we have William Foyle, who's a further 10 seconds up the road. It is the case that we have got a lot of time to go, so those laps and those gaps could change, but it is the case that Foyle and Glenn are in a bit of a race of their own ahead of these two. But of course, the amount of fuel saving that Martello could do here could enable him to jump ahead of Hodges and then go hunting after the top two to try and seal another win to wrap up his championship campaign. but we'll have to wait and see here as Martello right now comfortably in a position to take the win in the GT3 Apex Race Academy Pro class should the things finish as they currently stand. But as they make the way down, one driver who you will see behind them in the camera shot very briefly, it is Nigel Stock, who right now as he makes his way down towards Indianapolis running P6 in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class. It is the case after that contact between himself and Matt Emmons early on. Well, that contact has led to the pair of them being very far down in the race, but Nigel Stock, who needs to beat Matt Emmons, of course, it has not gone his way so far, and now Stock has to think about how to get back into the race. All he's got to do is keep putting the laps in and not make a single mistake, and then hope that Emmons drops the ball, of course, or makes that mistake as we keep it nice and plaintive with regards to the rest of this race, because to be fair, we still have just under 1.5 hours of racing to go, and anything can happen in the season finale before the checkered flag falls. Do not count it over yet for Nigel Stock, but as we do look from him to a bit further up the road, it's Davide Favo right now who finds himself P4 in the GT3 AM IMB Raceway class, and behind him that is Matt Emmons, P5 in the Apex Racing Academy AM class. And as they make the way down the Mulsanne Straight here, the second part of it, it's made up of 3 parts with the 2 chicanes breaking it up into 3 parts. Here's the case, the Racing Team Astra Orange driver will just be wanting to keep out of trouble here and keep delivering those laps. But as he makes his way down towards the braking zone, we're hearing that Phil McDougall has had an off-track and jump to the pit. So what has happened to Phil McDougall, I hear you ask? Let's find out. This was only moments ago coming into Indianapolis. He's coming okay then to Indianapolis corner. Oh, goodness me, and the car has just straight lined on there. I think that's brake fail. He's gone straight into the wall, and it was a jump to the pits for Phil McDougall. That was very unfortunate. I think the brakes have just seized on the car entirely, and the CXR Project Black driver has now got it all to do once again as we're starting to see some GT3 pit stops as Davide Favo lets Matt Emmons through, and Matt Emmons gains another place out of the circuit. His track position, he moves up to P23 overall, but not a gaining class position as well. The pit stops are underway, and Carmelo Mettello and Gavin Garner have not come into the pit, but we can tell you that whilst Mettello has stayed out, Matthew Hodges has come on in. Now, of course, the big question around that will be, has Hodges done the right thing to undercut Martello, or has Martello done the right thing to overcut his rival in that battle for P3? Well, coming out of the pit lane right now, here is William Vogt, who was your leader in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. When he came into the pit, he was leading by a sizable margin. He's come out just behind Sean Cranley Swash there, and Sean Cranley Swash has yet to take a pit stop, and he's in a different class, so it's not going to be too much of a concern, as there's enough of a gap between the two of them that if Foyle could close up to the back of Cranley Swash through Tetra Rouge, he'll be able to then go hunting for the position, the overall position, come the run down the Mulsanne Straight and into the chicanes, which won't cost him too much time. But the Crest Auto Sport Apex Tracks driver here looking very in control of this race as he makes his way through Tetra Rouge, gets it hooked up very nicely. And when I did have the chance to catch up with William Vogt in the build-up for tonight, he gave me quite a bit of an insight as well as his own personal thoughts. And in terms of the insight he's provided, he was worried about the fact there'd be low grip on the circuit, particularly in the Porsche curves in the Audi, and that would make the Porsche curves very tricky and have the rear step out. And we have seen that already, a number of drivers having the rear of their cars step out for the Porsche curves, not just the Audis. To be fair, we've seen also what the Lamborghinis go wide. Also, we have seen Jochen Siegert and the BMW, that rear of the BMW becoming unstuck, which is a very rare sight to see. And also, Foyle was saying to me that when the time of day on circuit gets to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it will get very hot with a track temperature about 41 degrees centigrade, which will make it a tricky circuit to deal with given the rate of attrition on the tyres. But he does love this circuit, and well, he does love the fact that it's an endurance race here with the LMP2s thrown into the mix. But as he makes his way down the Mulsanne Straight here, he was saying he was expecting to use quite a bit of fuel saving techniques down the straight, and well, he's looking forward to seeing how he gets on tonight. Well, right now I think he'll be very happy with the fact that we believe, is leading the GT3s overall. Once the first round of pit stops is complete, Carmelo Mettello and Gavin Gardner ahead of him have yet to take the pit stop, of course, but we'll wait and see if that's how it works out in practice. But as he heads on down towards the Mulsanne corner, it is the case. You can see that Cranley Swash trying to follow him, and William Ford just breaking the toe very briefly. As he heads on down, we do look here to Tristan Brega, who makes his way down the Mulsanne himself, trying to find his way past Lee Horn here. On the right is Tristan Brega, Lee Horn on the left, and it is the case the South African driver gets on through into the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. He does so in straightforward fashion, and now he'll go on racing Lee Horn there, being quite compliant. And I do know that Lee Horn is one of those drivers, when he knows not to battle, he'll simply leave the door open at the right place to do so, where it doesn't cost him any time. He's a very smart driver, is Lee Horn, and to be fair, Tristan Dinabrega, a smart driver as well. And as they make the way now down towards the Mulsanne corner, Lee Horn on the inside, so he's going to try and come on back here and battle. In fact, Dinabrega just backs off, I think respecting the fact that he can go for the move into Indianapolis as Lee Horn goes a little bit deep, but not too deep, and Dinabrega will have an early run here as they now head down towards the right into left-hander corner. But behind them, that is Vin Glenn. And after making his first stop, Vin Glenn did take a tyre change in the pits. He's had a longer stop compared to his peers, so here's the case. He's decided to roll the dice and make that early tyre change in this race, and that could come back to work for him later on as he now makes his way up towards Indianapolis. Of course, he was running P2 in the GT3 and Pro Apex Racing Academy class before the pit stops, and now he's in P6. But we'll have to wait to see how the tables turn as he rolls his way into Indianapolis and looking comfortable. Meanwhile, oh, goodness me, that's Lee Horn who's had a spin at Indianapolis. What's happened to Lee Horn? Well, as we take a look back here, passing with Tristan Dinabrega, but Dinabrega was on the inside to outside, and Lee Horn just carrying two. Oh, and there was a knock there, whereas they made their way into the corner, battling side by side, and Lee Horn getting a knock from Tristan Dinabrega, and well, that's a knock that neither driver wanted, and particularly Dinabrega, because right now that means he now has a little cloud hanging over his race. As you can see, the damage to Lee Horn there, particularly to the rear wing, it's crumpled, and Lee Horn, I don't think will be too pleased about that one. I think he came in a bit hotter than he would have liked, but still he'd made the corner, and in the end Dinabrega came into the back of him based on the camera angles we have available. Of course, we don't know the full story, the drivers will know the full story, and well, Lee Horn getting back up to speed as we return to those live pictures. As he makes his way for the Corvette curves here, it is the case that he will now be trying to nurse that car to the pits. Well, he'll be trying to nurse it for at least another 30 to 40 minutes if he can. He won't want to make a third stop, given he's only recently taken a pit stop, and he stays on out. And speaking of a driver who's just come out of the pits, that is Carmelo Mettello, who finds himself in P2, 16.4 seconds behind William Folt in the GT3 and Pro Apex Racing Academy class. And for the Italian driver, it is the case that right now he is looking to push on, given the fact that Vin Glenn has taken tyres in the pits, whereas Martello has not, and he'll know that given the fact that Vin Glenn is nowhere to be seen or close to him, and he'll be wary of what the permutations that will be in terms of how much he's now got to push in order to try and hold on to that P2. But meanwhile, speaking of holding on and battling, it's the case that Gaz Williams and Chris Daines here going toe-to-toe and chasing after Ed Lack as the top three in the LMP2 Pro class here make their way down towards Indianapolis. Robert Sunik spinning there in the rear of the picture at Mulsanne corner, but we stay with this battle for leaders. Lack side by side with Daines. Daines is going to go outside to inside very shortly, under trail braking into Indianapolis corner, and in the end Lack backs out there. Chris Daines makes the move, and Chris Daines making that ground very rapidly as they roll their way through. Oh, goodness me, that's not Chris Daines into the wall. Surely not. I think that's Peter Herschel. We'll have to wait to see if that is Chris Daines. My apologies. That is Chris Daines into the wall, and the Verano Motorsport driver has locked it up and gone into the wall. Let's take a look back. Well, as he made his way into the braking zone here, just took a bit too much. What was entry curve, and the front brakes just locking up. You saw the car just straight lined straight into the tyre barrier there, and in a rare error for the Danishman from Verano Motorsport, it is the case. He's gone into the wall, and it's a disaster for the 111 driver, as now he's got a damaged car and he's got to go hunting once again as we return to live pictures. Well, as he makes his way on through right now, that'll be a knock to the confidence, but he'll get himself back up to momentum in short order. And as he rolls his way on through, it is the case. We look to Lack and Williams as they go toe-to-toe now for the lead of the LMP2 Pro class. Of course, not the lead of the LMP2s overall. That's Paul Walton, who is a sizable 6.5 seconds ahead of the pair of them, albeit now it's going to go up to about 7.5 seconds by the time they get to Dunlop chicane, given the fact there that Farvo just going a bit slowly through the chicane compared to the LMP2s, but that is because he's in a GT3. But as they go on to another lap, they go on to lap number 14, it is the case that Williams tucked in behind and looking to try and make that pass, but no way through at the moment. I think we'll see that battle kick off down the Mulsanne straight. But speaking of a driver who's almost at the Mulsanne straight already, here he is, your LMP2 leader, Paul Walton from RD Simsport, as we see Paul Walton Sr. in the Facebook chat cheering on his son as he makes his way on through Tetra Rouge and now down the Mulsanne straight, and say go for the outright win tonight. And indeed he is going for it right now. He's gunning it down the straight. He's got Manmans in front of him, the GT3, who will stay over to the left hand side there. Paul Walton coming on through, using the toe and swinging the car well clear. He doesn't want to make any contact here. Walton just wants a straightforward race, and to be fair, that's how you get the win. As meanwhile, looking a bit further back, here is Ed Lack, as he makes his way down towards the first of the moles and chicanes. It is the case, the leader of the LMP2 Pro class, Gaz Williams, not too far behind, and right now you do have to wonder whether Williams is doing quite a bit of fuel saving, just staying in the slipstream, and he'll wait for the run down towards Indianapolis after Mulsanne corner to really go on the offensive as they come charging down. And we ride on board and listen in to Gaz Williams here as we just try to see whether he's doing any extra fuel saving in the Dallara P217 machine. You can see there, and in fact you can hear just completely coming off the throttle after a brief lift, and it is the case that Gaz Williams definitely doing a lot of fuel saving as much as he can in the hunt with Ed Lack. I think he'll feel as though he's got the lap pace to beat Lack if they both go 100%. So right now what he's doing is essentially just tying himself to the back of his rival and using him to coast along into the corners in the toe, and I suspect we'll see the same again as he comes into Mulsanne. In fact, you can hear it there before he gets to the king, lifting off and letting the car just simply come down the revs and then brake. And that also means he can brake a little bit more lightly into the Mulsanne corner and save the brakes, the front brakes, as they now make the way down towards Indianapolis. And as they come charging down here at speeds in excess of 160 mile an hour by the time they get into that braking zone, they come charging on down. And as they make the way through the second kick, you can see that brief lift from Gaz Williams. He's just trying to keep himself as close as possible, but not too close to run the risk of making contact with his rival in front. Really pacing himself nicely to Ed Lack here, and I think Lack will be conscious that he'll know that Gaz Williams is doing fuel saving behind, using him as a fuel saving mechanism as they roll their way through Arnage and head up towards the Forge curves. A very interesting tactics being applied, and as they make their way out of Arnage corner, it is the case we look from our two LMP2 Pro drivers to our GT3 and IMB Raceway driver Tristan Niedenbregger. And what has happened to Tristan Niedenbregger here? That Ferrari has been in a major amount. You can see the crumpled rear wing. Well, I think he's been in the wars. I'm not 100% sure what's happened. We are trying to get a replay of what's happened. I don't think we're going to be able to get one. It's happened recently, the contact, if something has happened to the back of his car. But whatever's happened, it is the case that Tristan Niedenbregger now in a wounded Ferrari will not want that damage to take its toll on his race. He'll be looking to try and just coast the car to its second pit stop later on, but we can't get a replay of that, unfortunately. We're not sure what's happened, other than that he does now have a rear wing that looks very out of place, and he's losing momentum for certain down the extended straights here with that aerodynamic damage. That's the one thing you don't want, is aero damage on long straights, because you simply lose 2 to 3 mile an hour, if not more, down each and every straight. And with the straights down here, seeing our drivers reaching excess typically of 150 mile an hour in these GT3s, losing 2 to 4 miles an hour will feel like a lifetime loss of speed. It is a horrendous amount of speed to lose down the straight, and therefore he'll be feeling the pinch. But as we see Tristan Niedenbregger making his way down towards Mulsanne corner right now, it is the case that we do look to Stefan Vessels here, as we can see the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, currently P3 in the LMP2 AM class. It is the case, just pressing on after that instant at this corner. He's just exited out of the Ford chicanes. It was the case he was in the gravel there after just narrowly missing the wall, and he's going hunting after Peter O'Shell, who's actually just found his way past Stefan Vessels. And it is the case that Vessels not having a great day at Le Mans, or at least in the first hour of the racing here at Le Mans tonight. But as they make the way out of the Dunlop chicane and now head their way down towards turns at 4 through to 6, it is the case that Vessels pushing on all the same as they make their way past Davide Favo there, who stays well clear of the LMP2 drivers. But now we do have some gaps really forming within the field. Here's the case, we now got the game of patience in terms of waiting to see how the strategies play out in the long term. But speaking of the drivers playing patience, we look back to the leaders of the LMP2 Pro class. And here's the case that Lack still leading ahead of Gaz Williams, and Williams now starting to just put his nose in there as if to say to Lack, look, I may be considering the move. Am I considering it? You'll have to wait and see. But then they back off as he rolls his way through what is the second of the most chicanes here. It is the case that Gaz Williams just staying nice and close to the CXR Project Black driver, but not trying to go for the move. Instead, just trying to put that pressure on, trying to get Lack to make a mistake under his own momentum, and therefore Williams will take the place naturally. We'll have to wait to see if that's how it works out in practice. As going from talking about one CXR Project Black driver to another, I'm sorry to report that Phil McDougall has had to retire from this race. He is our second retirement of the day. We've had 2 retirements out of our 28 drivers who've taken to the circuit. Phil McDougall for CXR Project Black and Jamie Dorey for NXTGEN Racing, both of them in the LMP2 Pro class, as this race heads towards the end of its first hour. as they make the way now down towards the Indianapolis corner here. It is the case that we look from our two LMP2 pros to one of our GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro drivers, and that is Lee Horn here, who finds himself tucked in behind, whereas you can see that they're the leader of the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy class. And as they come through, in this case, Lee Horn, of course, in that wounded Audi R8, well, he is trying to do everything he can to stay with Yokonsiga and potentially pass him. And you can see it here, the Team Tetra Rouge driver just very comfortably running in the lead of the GT3 and class right now, not having to do too much with regards to battling. The closest driver to him being Darren Doherty in class, who is 34 seconds behind. So you can see it is delivering well so far, and all of the drivers win his class, apart from Sean Cranley-Swash, decided to only take on fuel in that first round of pit stop. Sean Cranley-Swash deciding to take tyres as well, so we'll have to wait and see whether that benefits Sean Cranley-Swash, who's down in P4, whether he can get any closer to Yokonsiga over the remainder of the distance. But that's how the strategy becomes the intricacy of this race. It's the case that mix of drivers who take tyres in the first stop, who don't take tyres, of course when they take tyres they've got fresher rubber, they can typically go a bit faster once those tyres are up to temperature, but the downside is of course then they've got to make those tyres last longer, whereas the drivers who don't take tyres initially had to make their tyres last longer initially, and then they can go all in on that final set of tyres for the remaining 40 minutes. As they now come down towards the first of the moles and chicanes here, it is the case that you can see it looking comfortable, and Lee Horn just staying with the BMW driver. I think respecting the fact A, he's in a damaged car, so he loses a bit of straight line speed by default, and also B, that BMW M4 is the faster of the two down the straights by a considerable margin, and therefore benefiting from being in the tow. But as we look from them back to the battle for the LMP2 Pro Class lead here, with things settling down quite nicely as we continue our way around the circuit. It is the case that Ed Lack right now finds himself a little bit of traffic in front. That's Sean Cranley-Swash, who stays to the left there, and now Gaz Williams and Ed Lack will make the way on through, and behind them that is Chris Daines, who is closing up very rapidly to this pair after that major moment at Indianapolis only moments ago. And well, the Runner Motorsport driver here putting on the pressure, and well, the pressure is being applied because Gaz Williams knows he's got to come on through here. He goes up the inside, and well, for the braking zone in to the Mulsanne chicane, you can see their Lack giving him the space to go through the inside and take close as possible to a racing line. But now as they make the way out the first chicane, the battle continues here as they charge on down, and we do look to the blimp camera, and as they make their way underneath the tree line there from the blimp camera's perspective, it's side by side between the two drivers, but Ed Lack has got the overspeed here. Williams finds himself on the inside before the braking zone, and he backs off there. You can see how much he's backed off. Look how much that gap opens up before the braking zone, and as they roll their way on through, it is the case now that Gaz Williams jumps back to P2, but he'll have the run into Mulsanne corner. If he doesn't get the move done there, he'll have the run to Indianapolis. But Chris Daines, of course, hidden by the tree line somewhat, trying to close up as well as we look back to trackside now, and as he makes his way down towards the Mulsanne corner on the third part of the Mulsanne straight, that pace being delivered by Chris Daines, it's noticeable. And in terms of that last lap, despite being in a wounded car, he was a whole second faster than Gaz Williams and Lack. It is the case, of course, that he won't be doing as much fuel saving, although we doubt he'll be doing as much fuel saving. But then again, Chris Daines has shown us in the past he has a way of going faster than everybody and fuel save at the same time and make it straightforward at that. I wonder what does go through his head as he drives in the cockpit of that LMP2. But as he makes his way down towards what is Indianapolis, you can see already flashing his lights there for Elwyn Sykes to say to him, look, I'm coming through as well, whether you like it or not. And meanwhile, Lack versus Gaz Williams, and as they roll their way into Indianapolis there, Gaz Williams backs out. I think respecting the fact they've got Matthew Addy in front of them, and they don't want to make it 3 wide with a GT3 drive. You can't go 3 wide into Indianapolis. 2 wide's dangerous enough, albeit exciting enough as well. But it is the case that Ed Lackinen stays ahead and Gaz Williams being smart. But here comes Chris Daines, and that's the point now where Chris Daines is in the double tow, and as they make the way down towards the Porsche curves here, we ride on board with the Runner Motorsport driver, who is coming on very rapidly here. He's only 7 tenths behind, as we're hearing that Robert de Sunik has had an off track and has had to jump to the pits. We'll try to decipher what's exactly happened for the Dutchman shortly, but right now Chris Daines in the wounded car, which is most likely a bit more sensitive to aerodynamic changes on that front end. As you see them making their way through the Corvette curves, they've got Darren Doherty in front there, who's holding them all up. Albeit very nicely for Chris Daines, that will work out to his advantage And as they make the way through, Chris Daines is going to have the momentum here. He's going to look for at least one of them. Down to the four chicanes, he's going to make the move on Gaz Williams. Just siping to the inside. And now as they come into the second part of the four chicanes, the final two quarters, 32 and 33. Chris Daines not able to get the move done there, but he'll be in the prime position to go on the attack into the Dunlop chicane. Or will he wait to make the move down the Molesay straight here? Well, Chris Daines, despite having that whack to the wall, is now back into P2 in the LMP Pro class, and he is charging for this. But keep in mind, of course, that Gaz Williams is doing a huge amount of fuel saving right now, and this could benefit the next gen racing driver come the second round of pit stops. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to stay with the top two here, or whether he'll have to use a bit more fuel to do so as they roll their way up towards Tetra Rouge. And as they do right now, it is looking as though Gaz Williams just staying in the wings here and waiting and watching. Well, Chris Daines right now definitely getting the move on as all three drivers, they're literally staying right on the exit curve. I think the track limits of where's the Tetra Rouge corner, they're being defined typically by the white lines, but our drivers haven't been given permission to run wide onto that exit curve, as long as they keep two wheels on that curve on corner exit. And as they make the way down Molesay, and Chris Daines looking for the move here, he gets very close to the back of Lack, but will he go for it early? Surely not. He must know. Indeed, he stays behind, and I was going to say he must know that if he passes here, he's only going to be attacked on the second portion of the straight, and he'll lead to that back and forth, that to me to you situation with regards to battling down the straight. He waits once again, but Gaz Williams stays with him as this top three in the LMP2 Pro class all go toe-to-toe. Stefan Vessels is into the pits as I look out of my commentary box window very quickly. He's going from P3 in the LMP2 AM class, but we stay focused and glued here to the LMP2 Pro class as our top three, all with very unique driving styles, all with unique strategies here. They come into the second chicane. Now as they roll the way on through, we ride on board the gearbox of Lack, who gets a better exit by comparison with the drivers behind. Of course, that better exit will only last for a brief period of time before they all concertina again into the Molesay corner. And as they come charging up down here at speeds, braking well over 160 mile an hour, it is the case that Lack will be thinking now, what do I have to do to defend? Do I need to defend going into Indianapolis? Or is it the case that Chris Daines will tuck in behind? Well, that goes a little bit deep there through the Molesay corner. And now this is where we'll see. Does Daines go for the move? He's getting closer and closer as they come charging down the straight. And indeed, he swings the inside here. And as they make the way through the kick, Chris Daines is made to go over the curb there. Reacting to Ed Lack, pulling over to the centre of the road. And as they head now into the second kick, it's the case that the two of them head side by side into Indianapolis. Neither one want to back out here. Who's going to be the braver of the two? It is Chris Daines, who comes from the inside to outside line to retake the lead at the corner that only a few laps ago saw him go into the tyre barrier, and the Dane is ahead. Ed Lack behind, and then Gaz Williams tucks in P3 still. But the number 90 driver surely must see now that with Chris Daines getting ahead, he's going to need to make a move of his own if he wants to stay with the Verano Motorsport driver here. Ed Lack, of course, in the number 209 car, enjoying the racing all the same as they make the way up towards the Porsche curves. And as they roll their way into the sequence of rights into lefts, it is the case that Gaz Williams here really a difficult position. Does he continue to fuel save? Does he now deploy that extra fuel that he's got in order to stay close to Chris Daines, and in the process try to pass Ed Lack? We'll have to wait and see. That's not to take Ed Lack out of the equation. I can imagine Daines right now will be doing everything to try and break away and just open that gap up to a couple of seconds before the next round of pit stops, which is going to be approximately 15 to 20 minutes away as we pass the first hour mark. And you can see already that gap is creeping open, the gap up to 9/10 of a second as they made the way into the first of the four chicanes. Daines is pushing hard as they roll their way on through. As they come on to another lap here, that gap continues to expand, and meanwhile we look to the pit lane and we can see Tristan Di Nobrega has come into the pit, albeit he's obscured a little bit by the Michelin board there, but we can see Tristan Di Nobrega, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, he's in, he'll be using that fast repair, and I think he's taken an early second stop to get to the end and repair the damage that's been holding at bay. He goes up on the jacks as well, so a tyre change, all four tyres will be changed most likely. But as we look from him to Lorenzo Gualtieri, we can see Gualtieri here, the Racing Team Astra orange driver, who leads in the GT3 IMB Raceware AM class. It is the case that with Di Nobrega into the pit lane right now, it's one of those situations where we'll be thinking that he's doing everything right, but it's the case that Di Nobrega needs to finish third or lower. And with the retirement of Elwyn Sykes in this race, and what I'm hearing, it is the case we've got a retirement for the South African driver in the McLaren MP412C, which is a shame. We do love seeing Elwyn Sykes out on circuit, but something has gone very wrong for the McLaren driver. It is the case now, so long as Di Nobrega does not get passed by Davide Favo, it will be the case that Di Nobrega will take the championship crown in the GT3 IMB Raceware class. And Lorenzo Gaultier right now will just have to think that he did everything he could at the end of the day, but sometimes it just doesn't go your way. But meanwhile, Vin Glen here, remembering of course that Vin Glen took the tyre change in his first pit stop in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class compared to his peers. He's in P4 and he's making ground on the rest of his class. The only driver right now who's matching him, if not exceeding him for pace by dramatic margins, Carmelo Mettello, and he is being matched on pace by both William Foyle and also, as we look at our timing screens, also to a degree Gavin Gardner. And keep in mind as well, Gavin Gardner's yet to take a tyre change, so I think Vin Glen may, oh goodness me, and that's damage to the front of Vin Glen's car when we look underneath what from his perspective will be the front and left headlight, and as we look at it from the front right position, that car has been in the wars and that is a bit difficult. But we're actually having clarification there by Elwin Sykes in the YouTube chat to say that his electricity has just been cut off and he'll be rejoining very shortly. And well, just to clarify what we're referring to there and why it's the case that Elwin Sykes' electricity was cut off, unfortunately for those uninitiated in South Africa, they do have rolling blackouts and power shortages which have affected a good number of our South African drivers over the course of this season, particularly in the second half of the season, but even since the start. And unfortunately Elwin Sykes has been the recipient of a power outage, but hopefully we'll see him back out on the circuit very shortly and that'll be fantastic to see. But as we look here to Vin Glen right now, it is the case. He's not having to worry about power outages. He's having to worry about going all out in order to close up to the top three of Matthew Hodges, Carmelo Mettello and William Foyle in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. As we see a little bit further back there, that's Nigel Stock, who is a lap down on Vin Glen and right now in P6 in that Mercedes from Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks. And he was saying to me in the build-up to tonight, it was the case for Nigel Stock that given the fact that Mattman's only needed fourth place or higher if Stock was to take the win and the fastest lap, it was the case he just wanted to finish so he can get that second in the championship. And as we said earlier, wanting to get one extra win so that way he could make it 7 wins to 6 in him versus Matt Edmonds. Well, of course, that contact between himself and Edmonds is not the way neither of them all wanted it to go. And well, we do hope to see that Nigel Stock is able to make some more ground. And in terms of pace compared to his peers, it is the case that right now he's recently taken a pit stop. So Nigel Stock has had his second stop for the day, I do believe, his second scheduled stop. But the Crest Autosport Apex Tracks driver has been lapping on a similar pace to the top drivers in the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy class. So it's not a situation where he didn't have the pace today, he's just not had things go his way, which is very unfortunate as he continues to push on here, which is what we do love to see. You in it to finish it, even if he's not going to win it. But meanwhile, we look from him to Ed Lack, and here is Ed Lack who's chasing after Gaz Williams. In fact, he's been passed by Gaz Williams moments ago, and we take a look at how the pass was made. Well, this was in the run and down towards Indianapolis corner, and well, Gaz Williams went to the outside here, and as they made their way into the final braking zone, Gaz Williams went around the outside and Lack there battled on the inside, but Williams just had the momentum and the confidence and got the move done. Well, that's testament to next-gen racing driver's pace and also ability behind the wheel. And to be fair, Ed Lack, not an easy driver to overtake. Lack didn't make that too easy for him. And well, now Gaz Williams up a position as we return to the live pictures. And of course, it will be the case that the pair of them will be trying to hunt down Chris Daines, who has already put 2.5 seconds between himself and Gaz Williams as they make their way through lap number 19 of the LMP2 class. As they come on round now, it is the case with just under 55 minutes plus the final lap to go. We do look from our LMP2s back to what is Peter O'Shell, who our LMP2 Pro driver. He's running P4 in the LMP2 Pro class, and we're hearing that Robert Sunik has retired from this race as well. So we have had a third retirement in the LMP2 Pro class, and Robert Sunik had that moment earlier on at Mulsanne Corner from what we recall, and it is the case that Peter O'Shell right now tucked in behind. That is Paul Scott, the LMP2 AM driver, and the Verano Motorsport driver here just trying to find his way on through and trying to get himself a bit closer to the drivers in front. But to be fair, he's got a 32-second gap to close down to Ed Lack, and well, in terms of their rate of closure right now, it is the case that Peter O'Shell is lapping 1.5 seconds a lap faster compared to Lack. Albeit I think Lack and Williams were both in traffic that last time around. We'll have to wait and see how it averages out. But Peter O'Shell just keeping his head down and getting on with the job, as is this man in the GT3 BMW M4, the Team Tech Drew driver Jochen Seeger, as he makes his way for the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, looking very composed right now and looking happy behind the wheel of that car. Very comfortably up front by 36 seconds versus Darren Doherty, although we do have to keep in mind that Jochen only took fuel when he had his pit stop. Meanwhile, Darren Doherty took the tyres, at least 2 tyres by comparison, and also Sean Cranley-Swash took tyres in the pits, so that will play out in the second round of pit stops. We'll see how those strategies come together, but Jochen definitely delivering those laps. He's the fastest in class by a sizable margin. In fact, lap on lap, that last lap, he was a second faster than anybody else in the GT3 AM class. The only driver who came close to him was Matt Edmonds, who was 0.2 of a second slower, but as you can see, is lapping very quickly as he makes his way down towards Indianapolis and is very comfortably in control. As we're hearing that Elwin Sykes has just left the pit lane, and I do believe we can actually see Elwin Sykes, and here he is. He's returned to the car. It is the case, the power is back on, and he's powering on in P4 in the GT3 AM IMB Racewear class in the McLaren MP4 12C. The unicorn cars, we like to refer to it, given the fact it's so rare you see one of these in GT3, but it is the case that the South African driver pushing on and going to the very end, and that's brilliant to see. But as he makes his way on out here, he's got a couple of laps to go before he can close up and overtake the retired driver Davide Fava, who's currently technically P3. But meanwhile, we go from drivers who have come into the pits due to retirement to a driver who's into the pits for what is his scheduled stop. Chris Daines comes on in here, the Verano Motorsport driver, with just over 50 minutes left on the clock. This is his second scheduled stop, and I can imagine there's going to be a bit of fast repair work due to the whack to the wall at Indianapolis earlier on. Plus also now they will put those tyres on the car, and we'll have to wait and see how it works out for the Dane as he releases Ed Lack and Gaz Williams back up to P1 and P2 respectively once again, and will Lack right now doing everything he can in order to charge on and look to finish at least on that podium, if not take that potential win, as he makes his way out of Tetridge Corner and onto the Mulsanne Straight. And as he comes on out, it is the case. We look from him to Gaz Williams, who's a bit further up the road, and we can see here that Gaz Williams very firmly in control of at least what would be P2, depending on how his pace stacks up versus Chris Daines and how the pit stops play. He could be well on course for the win here as well, at least battling for it as he makes his way down into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. And really the story of Gaz Williams versus Chris Daines that we saw over the season, of course, that championship battle has now concluded, but Williams would love to take one last win. The story really has been that Chris Daines has just always had a couple of attempts advantage over what is Gaz Williams each and every race, and when Williams has been able to get close enough to battle with Daines, some bad luck has got in the way. Alternatively, the wrong corner strategy in the feature races has got in the way, but Williams here looking as though he's trying to end it on a high, and well, as he rolls his way through the second of the chicanes on the Mulsanne Straight, passing what is William Vole there. William Folt in the same boat. It is the case. The Crystal Sport Apex Tracks driver doing very well at the circuit. He does enjoy, and right now leading that GT3 Pro Apex race, the Academy class, albeit we still do have one second round of pit stop to go through. And as he makes his way down towards Mulsanne Corner here, he won't be thinking about that. All he'll be thinking about is his strategy and delivering on it as he heads into the braking zone. As he rolls his way through the Mulsanne Corner and now down towards Indianapolis he goes. It is the case that he is not really under any pressure at the moment. We'll see how that pressure articulates itself and manifests when we complete that second round of pit stops. But in the meantime, we do look to Matthew Addy here. And Matthew Addy running in P2 in the GT3 AM Apex Race of the Academy class. He's taken one pit stop, and in that pit stop he only took fuel, he didn't take tyres, and he's only ahead of Darren Doherty by 2 seconds at this time, albeit he's just passed Darren Doherty in fact. Let's take a look back at the pass. This was only moments ago in the run down towards Indianapolis Corner. Is that damage to Darren Doherty's car? I don't think so. I think he just had a bad run. Well, Darren Doherty going quite slowly there, and I do wonder whether the Irishman's got damage on that Lamborghini. As he rolls his way through, can we see anything? No, it's no damage. He's just going slowly. I wonder if Darren Doherty here has got a problem with the car that we can't see. Alternatively, he should let Matthew Addy go, recognising that he's already changed tyres as Darren Doherty, whereas Matthew Addy has yet to change tyres, and therefore Doherty doesn't need to battle with him. He'll battle him through the pit stop. But Matthew Addy right now, having had an early spin in this race, is recovering well and really pushing on. But the thing is, for him and indeed for everybody in the class, nobody is matching that pace of Jochen Seeger, it would seem, as he makes his way down towards Mulsanne Corner in due order. But as he does, Darren Doherty as well, the Irishman, of course, who was able to make tonight after informing us he wouldn't be able to make Le Mans. He has been able to due to a change of schedule. And the Irishman here doing very well right now, running P3 in the class. And we suspect that's the equivalent of at least P2 in the class when the final round of pit stops is complete. As he comes out to the right-hander of Mulsanne. Mulsanne. But meanwhile, into the pit lane, there is Paul Walton, your race leader in the LMP class and overall. And then we have behind that's Gaz Williams coming on in, Lee Horn there parked up as well. And we've also got Ed Lack coming into the pits, but Paul Walton coming in from a sizable advantage. All these drivers, of course, will need to change tyres in the pit lane. And, well, will we have anybody coming through? Here's Paul Scott making his way into the pits as well. So it is pit stop season once again for our LMP2s. And, well, Chris Daines made that second stop earlier on. And, well, where is Chris Daines, I hear you ask? Well, here is the Verano Motorsport driver who took those tyres in the pits. He makes his way through the Porsche curves, and as he does, as a case we suspect now, he'll be trying to go to the end on the tank of fuel he's got, albeit he's pitted quite early compared to his peers. And as he rolls his way through the Porsche curves, everybody will be trying to make it a two-stop race. They won't want to take a third stop if they can avoid it, but Daines pushing on. And as he heads to what will be the Ford chicanes, it will be the case that Paul Walton already X'd in the pit lane. And, well, Chris Daines couldn't have picked a worse time to come up behind a GT3 car. We know that GT3s go quite slowly through here. We saw that major moment involving Stefan Vessels and a number of other drivers earlier on. And, well, where is Gaz Williams? Gaz Williams is leaving the pit lane, so this is going to be very close. He's going to have to get himself back up to speed. Where's Chris Daines by comparison? Well, there is Chris Daines. Gaz Williams has jumped back out ahead of Chris Daines, and I think it may be the case with the fuel saving that Gaz Williams was doing behind Ed Lack. He's been able to get the jump, and in terms of that pit time, well, there's the story, ladies and gentlemen. It's the case that Gaz Williams was stationary for 4 seconds less compared to Chris Daines, and he's been able to get back ahead. But now the big question will be, can Chris Daines come back at Gaz Williams, given the gap is only 1.1 seconds? And, well, Daines will need to give it his all here, but at the same time, surely he must be worried a little bit about the fuel situation, and Williams has got one less lap to do to the end by comparison with Daines, and that will work to his advantage as they make the way on to the Mulsanne straight. You can see that gap already less than a second, as now Daines is well within the tow of Gaz Williams, and these LMP2 machines, of course, pick up the tow very, very rapidly, and when they're in the draft, the amount of speed they gain, particularly in top gear, is absolutely terrifying as they make the way into the Mulsanne chicane, the first of the two chicanes, and as they roll the way on through, Daines closing up very, very aggressively under braking. The gap now down by 3 tenths, it's 6 tenths as they make the way down the second part of the Mulsanne straight, and they continue to push on. Now, Daines is going to go for it. The question will be, will he do it immediately, or will he be patient and try and do some fuel saving? That will tell us the situation with his car. If he goes the moves early, it will be the case he'll feel as though he's got enough fuel to get to the end and he can play about with the fuel. Meanwhile, if it's the case he just stays tucked in behind, he may be thinking about doing some fuel saving and then go on the offense to the end. But of course, that means that Gaz Williams can dictate the pace a little bit and even do some extra fuel saving of his own, even if he has the fuel to go to the end already, because by saving a bit of fuel, he may be able to abuse the rev range of the car even more as they make the way down towards the Mulsanne corner. And this will be the first test once they've cleared Mulsanne and headed towards Indianapolis. They've got Nigel Stock in front of them in the GT3. They'll clear Nigel Stock at corner exit, but as they roll the way on through now, we can see there both of the LMP2s peeling to what will be the left from our camera angle, the right of Nigel Stock from Nigel Stock's perspective. And as they make the way now down this straight, will we see Daines look for the move? Well, Gaz Williams is going to go defensive. He puts himself on the inside line through the 2 kinks, and as they make the way through the second kink, it's now the case. Daines on the outside, Gaz Williams on the inside. They head in towards Indianapolis corner. Who's going to be brave on the 2 on the brakes? It's going to be Daines who goes around the outside, and as he gets under braking now, can he hook it under brakes? He does indeed. He doesn't go straight on, and he gains the position from Gaz Williams as they roll the way into Arnage corner. And now Gaz Williams will have an opportunity to come back in the run up towards the Porsche curves. Will he be able to capitalise on it? That will be the challenge. Well, I get the feeling he may not be able to here. It's not the longest of runs. It's a run indeed, but if Chris Daines felt threatened, he could always pull it to the inside. And ahead, and that's Gavin Gardner, and they're going to catch up to the Verano Motorsport driver there as they make the way through the first of the Porsche curves. We can see that Gardner literally just peeling as far as he can over to the right. The LMP2s will have to go slowly through, and backing off there, Chris Daines has gained massively. In fact, Gaz Williams there hesitant as he makes his way past Gavin Gardner. I don't think you'd be thinking that Gardner was going to pull across him. I think Gaz Williams just erring on the side of caution as Gavin Gardner there rolls a little bit wide, and well, that has opened up the gap between the two to 1.5 seconds already. And Chris Daines now will try to exploit that gap and open it up to 2 seconds, or as close as possible to 2 seconds before they get onto the Mulsanne straight. She really needs at least 1.75 seconds to get rid of that draft effect down the extended straight as they go on to what for them is lap number 22. As they head on through, we now do look from them So a bit further down the order, and here is Paul Scott, who right now chasing after Peter Herschel as they make their way through the Porsche curves. He's hunting down what will be P5 overall, and Peter Herschel, of course, in the LMP2 Pro class, whereas Paul Scott is in the LMP2 AM class. So there'll be no change of class position, as Paul Scott running P2 instead. Class looking comfortable at the moment. He's got an advantage of 26.5 seconds over Stefan Vessels, but he's 53 seconds down on Paul Walton as they roll their way through the 4 chicanes this time around. But speaking of coming into the pits, meanwhile, it's the case that you can see it comes in here for his second and final stop of the day. The GT3 AM Apex Race Academy leader. Where is Matthew Addy by comparison? Well, Addy stays out here. He's going to go around once again. What about Darren Doherty? Does he peel on in? No, he doesn't. So Jochen Siegert here will take the initiative. He'll effectively have an undercut on the GT3 drivers he's battling with within his class. And Jochen Siegert right now, I think he'll feel as though this is done and dusted when he sees them come on past. As meanwhile, Sean Cranny Swash here rolls his way through the 4 chicanes as well. So Jochen Siegert coming in early. Does that mean he's potentially got some fuel savings to do come the end of the race as well? That'll be a concern for him. As they make the way across that timeline, the Verano Motorsport driver Cranny Swash here looking to try and get into that hunt for the podium. He's definitely in that hunt, to be fair, but he's got another pit stop on the card. So whilst he's ahead of Jochen Siegert right now, we do imagine it will flip the other way round once Cranny Swash comes into the pits and exits. As well, they're still working in Jochen Siegert's car, as would be expected. And here is, meanwhile, your second place driver in the GT3 AM IMB Raceway class of Tristan Dienebrega, who has taken what is 3 pit stops now. He's been in the wars, he's had damage to the car as well. So it is the case that the Racer Team Astra Blue driver, to be fair, he only needs to finish P2 today. He won't want to finish P2, but it'll be more than enough to guarantee him what will be the championship win. And Lorenzo Gualtieri, who's leading by 2 minutes right now, he may be leader, but that's not going to mean anything in terms of the championship unless Dienebrega finishes 3rd or lower. But right now, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver looking very comfortable there and just trying to bring this one home to the conclusion. But there's still a way to go, as we see Jochen Siegert has come out in P4 in his class in the end, in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class, or P19 overall. And now he's got a nice amount of clear track. He's got Tristan Dienebrega 3.5 seconds up the road. He's got a 6-second gap to Dan Skinner, the LMP2 driver behind, who is going to close up, but will overtake him most likely by the time they get to Indianapolis. And then he has got a 50-second advantage to Matt Emmons. Well, at least 50 seconds, we should say, although I think Matt Emmons, in fact, is not a lap down. I think it's a bit more than 50 seconds in actuality. But right now, the simple story is that you can see it's very comfortably in clear track, and therefore he can go to town in delivering those laps as Matt Emmons is into the pits for another pit stop. And also there we do have coming in, that's Stefan Albanese. Both of these drivers have had difficult races and indeed are just trying to bring it home now. Well, as they make their way into the pits once again, it is the case we look from them and the DRS Esport LMS2 driver Albanese to the DRS Esport LMS1 driver Carmelo Mettello, as William Vaught is into the pits for his second scheduled stop, and Carmelo Mettello for the first time in this race will lead the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. He'll know that William Vaught had a sizable gap before coming into the pits, and both drivers have only taken fuel. So it is the case now that Martello will have to think about pushing it on these laps, because he will want to come out as close as possible to William Vaught and then go on the offensive. But both drivers will have fresh tyres when they come out. They'll be able to exploit those tyres with the time remaining. Less than 40 minutes to go as they make the way on through. And now Martello has got it all to do. As you can see Foyle there in the pits, and behind him up on the jacks, that is Albanese. We've also got Matthew Hodges coming in. He just parks the car up now, and that will mean for the CXR Project Black driver, he's going to come out behind William Vaught. There's no doubt about that. Vin Glenn also coming in, as we see the Deutsche Bank BMW M4, and also Lorenzo Gualtieri coming on in there from the lead of the GT3 AM IMB Raceway class, as we see Matt Emmons exits his pit box and makes his way out of the pit lane. But it's pit stop season for our GT3s once again. But meanwhile, we do look here to Peter Herschel from Verano Motorsport, that's going a bit slowly compared to Paul Scott, who goes round the outside of him into turn 1 before they get to the Dunlop chicane. And I think Peter Herschel, they're serving a slowdown penalty in the Verano Motorsport LMP2 Pro Class machine, and that would have been for track limits most likely at the 4 chicanes. But as he now falls behind Paul Scott, we do look to William Vaught, who makes his way out of the pit lane, and this is effectively, as we understand it, the lead of the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, with both Gavin Gardner and Carmelo Mettello yet to take their second stop. But Vin Glenn exits the pit lane and he jumps ahead of Matthew Hodges. Vin Glenn in the end, by taking what was the tyres in that first pit stop has jumped ahead of Hodges, who is coming out behind him, and there's Hodges. That is the gap he's jumped ahead by, and well, now the CXR Project Black driver has got a lot to do if he wants to close on up, because this could put him at risk of losing out his spot on the podium. And Vin Glenn, with a gap of what is 9.5 seconds to William Foyle, will now have to go hunting in that BMW M4. He'll want to try and take the win, and he's got to do everything now to deliver on that. Indeed, those tyres, they'll be up to temperature, but the problem for him is, given track temperature has gone up quite sizably since the start of this race, he's now got to worry about tyre degradation, because remember, his tyres have already done approximately 40 minutes, whereas William Foyle's have yet to do more than 3 minutes, and that means that Foyle technically has the tyres that can be abused a bit more. But again, when you get those tyres up to temperature, you can abuse them when they're fresh, but you can't push them too hard. Go too hard and you'll be off circuit, and that's something that Foyle will be very wary of, as now Vin Glenn goes in hot pursuit. But meanwhile, we do look from Vin Glenn to Gaz Williams here, who's the next-gen racing driver running P2 in the LMP PRO class. Chris Daines just very briefly cuts below the camera shot into our nudge, and as we see Williams making his way under braking into the corner, he is trying to hunt down at Chris Daines, but it is the case the gap between the two of them continues to open up gradually. It's now 4 seconds. Gaz Williams, I think, more focused on staying ahead of Ed Lack, who has dropped to the best part 14 seconds behind. They've served their second stops, and now it's all about keeping it steady until the conclusion of the race, until that checkered flag. Soon there's no more pit stops on the cards for any of these drivers, but we will have to wait and see whether that is the case in practice. It's the same story for Paul Walton, your leader in the LMP2 AM class, and indeed your overall leader of the LMP2s and this race as a whole, in the fact that he makes his way into Ford chicanes. He's got a 54-second advantage over second place man in class, what is Paul Scott, and in return he does have a 7.5-second advantage over Chris Daines. But one thing I can tell you right now is that advantage over Chris Daines, the LMP2 Pro driver, it's not going to last much longer based on the current rate of travel, because Paul Walton on that lap of 31.596. What about Chris Daines by comparison, as he takes to that time line? We'll see it pop up shortly, a 32.720. So in fact, Walton opens up the gap by a second that time around, but I think Chris Daines had some traffic. But over the last couple of laps, Chris Daines has been taking at least a second out of Paul Walton. The RD Simsport driver has got a pro coming for that overall win, and will we see Paul Walton go defensive, knowing that for him and Chris Daines, they've both wrapped up their championships already, and they're both crowned champions with this race to spare. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing that is more important right now, Carmelo Mettello comes into the pits from the lead of the GT3 Pro Apex Race Academy class. This will be a tyre change stop. It's going to be an extended stop. What about Gavin Garner? Oh, good spin. And that is somebody going for a spin. That's Peter Schell, who's taking a spin there at the run into the fourth chicane, to the second chicane. We'll take a look back at that shortly. That's one Piranha Motorsport driver getting it wrong, and Gavin Garner gets it nice and right there as he brakes before the pit lane limiter, and indeed as he makes his way down, it is the case the Runner Motorsport driver now, well, he's going to come out behind William Foyle, we do know that, but where will he come out versus Vin Glenn and Matthew Hodges? And here is Will Foyle to give you an idea. He's making his way through the Porsche curves and up into the Corvette curves now. As he rolls his way through the curves, he runs wide. That's going to be a slowdown he's going to have to serve. He's pushing hard here, is Foyle, and well, that is not as hard as you want to push. He'll have to give that time back, and that could hurt him in the long haul as he makes his way into what is the Ford chicanes, and as he rolls his way on through, how much time will he still have to give back? That will be the question. As he comes out of the final chicane, he goes slowly, and now he pulls the speed up. Carmelo Mettello's leaving the pit lane. It's going to be close between the two of them. We look to the blimp here. Who's going to come on through first? That's Martello on the right. That is going to be William Foyle on the left. It's Foyle who gets ahead, but it's not by much, and that gap has come down massively since the start of this race. It was over 10 seconds. The gap now, with William Foyle having to serve that slowdown, is no more than 3 seconds, and there's Vin Glenn. Vin Glenn has closed up on the pair of them with that undercut. We've got a three-way fight for the win in the GT3 Pro Apex Race Academy class here at Le Mans. You love to see it. 35 minutes remain, and now who will be the winner? Will it be Will Foyle? Will it be Carmelo Mettello? Or will it be Vin Glenn? Time is going to tell, but all three drivers now pushing. But the thing for Vin Glenn is he is on old tyres. They're up to temperature, but how long can they hold on? Versus Carmelo Mettello and William Foyle, who are trying to get those tyres up to temperature and get them to work wonders. As they make the way down the Mulsanne straight here, Vin Glenn has been right on board. He's already now in the distance of Carmelo Mettello's Audi, and that added to the fact that BMW is the faster of the two down the straight. This will mean that Vin Glen is going to close up very quickly. Now the problem or the challenge for Martello is he's got to think about how he plays this race. Now Martello in the championship stakes, the only driver he's got to worry about is Matthew Hodges. Oh goodness me, and Martello there almost into the tyre barrier coming out of the chicane, just understeering wide. Those tyres are nowhere near temperature right now, and that's cost him dearly for as they drag race their way down the second part of the Mulsanne. You can see it is the case here. Vin Glen is going to have the overspeed before the braking zone. He'll be alongside, he'll be on that inside braking line, but it's going to be a battle on the brakes here between the Audi and the BMW driver, and as Vin Glen looks to outbrake on that inside line, here will it be the case he's able to get away with it here. Martello's going to stay with him, but Martello in the end tucks in behind. He'll look for the run into the Mulsanne corner and then down towards Indianapolis, but in return of course this squad in between the two of them means that Will Foyle will be able to run away as they make the way down towards the Mulsanne corner. And well, now you can see Vin Glen here puts that BMW in the middle of the road to signal to Martello, please do not go for the move, guys, I'm going to make it awkward for you. But Martello has other plans here as they head into the kink of 14, and who will come out on top? It's going to be the case they roll the way under braking. Vin Glen stays ahead for now. Martello making it clear he's not backing out of this, and what we're trying to say is that if Martello backs out of these battles and lets Vin Glen just simply play the pace, they will turn it into a freeway fight for leagues. You can imagine Vin Glen right now will have that straight line speed. He's already taken 4 tenths out of Foyle's lead down the straights here, and as they make the way to Indianapolis, where it's the case Martello looks to the outside once again. He'll be looking to trail brake round the outside to inside into the right into left corner of Indianapolis, and as they roll the way through, it's going to be Martello on the outside, Vin Glen on the inside. They're side by side through the left-hander, and there's a bit of contact between the two of them. In the end, just a bit of understeer for Martello, but Vin Glen returns to the circuit. A flash of lights there for Martello. Neither driver's happy with the other. It is gloves off here with 32 minutes to go, but they're losing sight of the big prize in front of them, and that is that William Foyle right now is being allowed to run away with things when really they should be closing up to him. The Crystal Sport Apex Tracks driver here, I think, will be looking at his rearview mirror. He'll be looking at the time machines or hearing from his team manager in his ear that Vin Glen and Martello are battling hard, and that means he can just begin to eke out an advantage as he rolls his way through the Porsche curves. Well, of course, for that contact between Glen and Martello, Martello's already dropped a second behind Glen. I'm wondering where he's having to nurse some aerodynamic damage to the car and adjust to the damaged car now, because he's dropped a long way back after a flash of lights there. But I think that's going to be treated as a racing incident by the steward should it get reported, for the simple reason that Martello there just came in a little bit hot under brake. He just seemed to understeer a little bit wide, and therefore he knocked Vin Glen side on. I must admit, Vin Glen returned to the circuit. He was quite forceful coming back on, but I think he feels as though, well, if you're going to force me off, I'm going to force my way back onto the circuit. But to be fair, I think the two of them have settled their differences, and now they go racing again. But just look at this, Vin Glen on that lap alone has just stripped 3.5 seconds out of Foyle. Foyle is struggling here. He's just not got the pace at this point in the race. Vin Glen is on fire, and as they make the way on through, we've got multiple incidents involving Dino Brega, Evans and Albanese, which we'll come to very shortly as they make the way on out. And we see them in the YouTube chat, and we say hello to Davide Farbo, who is very grateful for everything this season, saying it's been magic and we appreciate you racing, Davide, and it's unfortunate you've had to drop out due to power issues, but thank you for trying to soldier on to the very end here at Le Mans, and still credit to yourself and a great campaign from yourself in the Racing Team Lasher Orange Lamborghini Huracan. But as we focus back now to the battle here for the win in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, it is the case that Vin Glen is looking on fire. My goodness, what if we had to count back to a time when we've seen a driver flying like this in the past? Well, so you may remember it all the way back here. It was at Le Mans in what was I believe it was the first season of the GT3 Championship, where we had that battle for P3 between 4 drivers in what was at the time the Prime class, and in particular it was the battle between Jeremy DeBova, Matthew Hodges, and I can't quite remember the other 2 drivers. I think Jean-Louis Deschamps was in there as well, where Jeremy DeBova was the driver on fire to come through to the lead of the class and then going defensive each and every corner. But now as they make their way down here, just look at the speed that Glen is holding here as they make the way down. And what has Foyle got in the tank? Surely he's got to have something up his sleeve. He stays to the outside here. I think Foyle is thinking about the run to Indianapolis. Well, I think he's got to think a bit more about the run into the second chicane right now, because Vin Glen comes on through on the inside here, and well, the Crystal Sport Apex Tracks driver is just, it's looking stationary by comparison. I'm not saying he's not trying, by the way. It just looks slow compared to that BMW. That BMW is flying, but could that raise the question as well that Vin Glen perhaps is pushing a bit too hard right now and may come back to haunt himself a bit later on? Well, if he does, does, we'll be sure to tell you about it. But right now, Foyle is definitely flying, and indeed, we say hello to Isabella Goulden there. I've perhaps butchered your surname there, Isabella, and I do apologise for that, saying Vin is on fire. Indeed, he is absolutely smoking hot down these straights right now, and indeed, as they make the way now down towards what is Indianapolis, will we see Will Foyle come back as we ride on board here with the Briton from Crestall to sport with Apex Tracks, and in the Audi R8 LMS here, it is the case you can see Vin Glenn there just doing a little bit of bob and a weave through the first kink in the run on down the Toyota straight, or the Toyota hybrid straight, given the billboards that run over it. But as they make the way now up towards Indianapolis corner, I think Foyle is just going to play the patient game. He's not close enough to try and seize a move, and instead he actually backs off quite early there. I wonder whether Will Foyle is potentially either underfueled, or he thinks there's a third stop on the cards for our GT3 drivers, and therefore he's not really pushing this too hard as they make the way into Arnage, but he gets it a little bit out of sorts there coming into the Apex Arnage. And goodness me, that was as close as you want to get to that exit tyre wall as they make the way out the corner. Well, we'll have to wait and see whether there's a fuel situation, but as they come through, it is the case that right now Vin Glenn is off into the distance, and well, as they make the way on down, we do look to Stefan Vessels, who's come into the pit lane for another pit stop. Vessels is not having a good day here at Le Mans. It's not working out for him. We see Lee Horn there parked in the pit lane. That car's been there for some time. I wonder if they're trying to fix the technical issue, and well, we do look to this incident involving Tristan Dina Brega, Matt Emmons and Stefan Albanese. Well, we're just seeing Tristan Dina Brega by himself at the moment. I think it might be three separate instances of an incident. And here's Dina Brega, who takes a bit too much curb there on the entrance to Indianapolis, and he slides. Does he avoid the wall? I think it was a small bump to the wall, but nothing too drastic. But the Racing Team Astra Blue Drive involved in an incident of his own doing into Indianapolis, and that will have his heart on edge. What about Matt Emmons? Well, this was only moments ago, and I think the Next Gen Racing, in some cases, UK driver coming down in the run before Tetra Rouge, coming through turn number 4 there, loses the rear of the car, and then Stefan Albanese has to stamp on the brakes and safely navigate as Matt Emmons gets out the way. And well, to be fair, Albanese literally being the ultimate Italian gentleman there in terms of just staying clear of Emmons and just putting the brakes on. He's not battling with anyone, and just knew that it was going wrong and just simply stayed put. And to give credit to DRS Esport LMS2 driver, despite today not going his way, he'll definitely get some gentleman points for the fact just being very patient there. And well, that's what we do like to see. But as we look back to the live pictures right now, Stefan Vessels in that P3 position in the LMP2 AM class here, 1.5 minutes behind Paul Scott. It's just not going his way, but to be fair, he'll still be P2 in the championship come the end. And it's been a brilliant effort from Stefan Vessels, and really in the championship he has been the driver who's had the worst luck of any. But to be fair, if he hadn't had that bad luck, oh, how the story could potentially be different in that battle with Paul Walton. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes you can have all the bad luck in the world compared to your rival, who can have good luck or just simply not have any bad luck or good luck, just simply have races which go their way. And well, for Vessels, it is a case that on a championship campaign, his first campaign in an LMP2 machine, he started off as a rookie in this machine, would you believe it, going into the season, and he's definitely acclimatized to it. And I can imagine if he does come back for another LMP2 championship of the future, there's no reason why he wouldn't be looking to up his game even further. But we do very quickly look to, you can see it here as he makes his way across the timeline in P3 and hunting after Sean Cranley Swash. And after the second round of pit stops, well, this is a dynamic we didn't expect to see. You can see it, in fact, has come out behind both Cranley Swash and also Darren Doherty. You can see that the top three in the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy class all in line astern formation as they make their way out of the Dunlop chicane, and as they head down towards Tetra Rouge and subsequently the Mulsanne straight. You can imagine the battle for the lead of the class will now go down to the very end. And whilst they're making their way down towards what is Tetra Rouge corner and through it, we do look to the chat and say hello to Phil McDougall in the YouTube chat, who was agreeing there with regards to Vin Glenn being really putting his power down, and also apologising for backing out the retirement due to 27 degrees heat and not being able to concentrate. And that's no problem, Phil. At the end of the day, if you're not feeling comfortable, we completely understand, but we do appreciate you taking to the circuit, and nobody can take anything away from yourself and indeed the CXR Project Black team for the efforts that yourself and the team have put in over the course of this season. We're always happy to have you back, you know that. As we see here, Sean Cranley Swash looking up the inside of Darren Doherty in the run down into the first Mulsanne chicanes, and well, as they do, Darren Doherty stays ahead. Cranley Swash trying to get the move done there, but he wasn't able to get it finalised. But now as they make the way onto the second part of the straight, you can see staying in the slipstream train. The three drivers here with Darren Doherty right at the front with no toe whatsoever. He's got to do it all based on pure power. And here's the case, the German engines powering these machines. Those Lamborghinis, of course, powered by the Audi R8 engine of what is a V10 as they make the way on down, although perhaps don't tell Lamborghini it's a German engine. And as they make the way down into the second of the Mulsanne corners here, it's the case, the 6-cylinder 3-litre engine at BMW really staying close now and making its power known as they roll their way out of the second Mulsanne chicane. And now as they head on down towards what is Mulsanne corner, will we see a potential move here? We ride on board the gearbox of Darren Doherty, and we can see there is the case of Cranley Swash, I should say, peels out for the move. He looks the inside there before the King. They're side by side into the King of 14, and as they do, Cranley Swash up the inside here, but he backs out once again. The Rhino Motorsport driver trying to put Darren Doherty under undue pressure there, and the reason for that, he's trying to get Darren Doherty to outbrake himself, so that way then he has to run as the leader all the way down towards Indianapolis, but it's not to be. So instead, Cranley Swash will now give himself one more run as they head up towards Indianapolis. He'll need to do it soon, because they've got what is not just Jochen Siegert behind them, but also the LMP2 Aaron driver Paul Scott, who's not too far away and will have to come through this battle shortly. And as they make the way underneath the Toyota hybrid billboard there, it is the case you can see Cranley Swash trying to get to the middle of the road. Darren Doherty covers him off. Cranley Swash made to go to the outside there. Darren Doherty just positions himself well. A flash of lights there from Cranley Swash. I don't think he's happy with the fact that Darren Doherty pulled into the middle of the road and then brought it back to the outside. But as they now head into Arnage corner, you can see Darren Doherty defends the inside and then brings the car back into the middle under braking for Arnage corner. The battling goes on here, and well, I think so far Darren Doherty, he's been a little bit strong with the defending, but nothing too excessive, although it could be the case that we might see some more heavy defending there from Darren Doherty shortly, because he'll want to take the win, of course, in a race that he wasn't expecting to take part in. And as they crisscross there, Cranley Swash made to go to the outside once again. Darren Doherty goes to the middle of the road as Cranley Swash cuts the inside, then back to the outside. There's not really an inside line under attack into the Porsche coach. You have to look to the outside in order to go for the move later on. And as they roll the way through right now, it is the case we ride on board here with the Lamborghini Huracan driver from Rhino Motorsport, who's trying to make the offensive versus his Irish rival as they come out of the Corvette curves and now up towards the Ford chicanes. We've only got 22 minutes to go plus the final lap. We've got about 5 more laps, if not 6 more laps for these GT3 class drivers as they head under heavy braking into the first of the 2 Ford chicanes. And as they do here, you can see the body language of Darren Doherty's car. Absolutely, oh my goodness, and Sean Cranley Swash there gets it wrong, but just catches the car. That is well caught on the brakes there by the Rhino Motorsport driver. And well, we were riding on board there, but let's take a look back at how that happened from an exterior picture. Whereas the case as they ran their way down into the chicane. What you're going to see here, they clear the first chicane fine, but in the second one, Cranley Swash there just swings a little bit too hard to the outside line for going into the second chicane, and the rear of the car, what the Lamborghini of course being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, so the centre of mass is further back, the engine's behind the driver. It is the case that swing to the right caused the engine to swing as well. The centre of mass swung with the car, and he wasn't able to get that momentum of the car to settle before he went into the braking zone. In the end, expecting the car to react too quickly to his braking input, and in the end, Cranley Swash just catching the car. And to be fair, despite that mistake, he's barely lost anything. He's lost the place, yes, but he's only dropped 2 seconds behind Jochen Siegert. That is testament to Cranley Swash right now, driving on the limit. And well, you can't fault the man for bringing it under control and going to hunt him once again. And now we have to imagine Jochen Siegert here will try to come past Darren Doherty if he can get close enough, but Darren Doherty is not going to make this easy. And I would be able to predict, I think, that it's going to be the case these three will all come back together in short order unless Jochen Siegert can find a way to make the pass on an extended straight and just simply break away from Darren Doherty under braking. Well, I think theorising that is one thing, actually it happening in practice is another as they make the way on down. And meanwhile, we do cut to the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, and in particular here, Garen Gardner, who is running in P5 in the class, and he has Lorenzo Gualtieri, the GT3 IMU Raceware AM leader right now, who is trying to go hunting after that position as they make the way down towards what is Indianapolis here. And the Racing Team Astra Orange driver, he'll have most likely heard about Tristan Dino Brega having those moments on circuit, and he has a 28-second advantage. But it's all for nothing in the championship, given that Tristan Dino Brega, all he needs to do is finish 1 place behind to take that championship crown. Well, as Gualtieri makes his way on through, it is the case that right now he'll be focusing on just bringing home that win and delivering as he makes his way up through the right-hander of Arnage And as he comes charging on around, it is the case that the drivers all pushing on here with only 20 minutes to go. As we see there in the Facebook chat, we say hello to Paul Williams, saying gutted to be missing this one tonight. Indeed, we're gutted not to see you out on the circuit. Paul, it is the case. We do love to see the team Tetra Rouge drivers out on the circuit, yourself included. And well, we hope you're doing well as we now return to Matthew Addy here, as he makes his way out of the Mulsanne corner. It is the case of the Next Gen Racing with Sam Case's UK driver. Indeed, the whole Next Gen Racing with Sam Case's UK team have not had a happy day at Le Mans. In fact, he's running P4 in class. Matt Evans is behind him in P5. It has been a very difficult day at the office, and one where they were looking to potentially snatch that win in the team's championship. And right now, at best, they are going to be, if I do my mental maths correctly, looking at P3 in the championship behind Verano Motorsport, who are on course to seal the win in the championship. And then it will be behind them, if I am not mistaken, it will be Racing Team Astra Blue, I want to say, although I could be wrong there. But right now, Matthew Addy makes his way out of Arnage and just pressing on. And meanwhile, here is Darren Doherty, the GT3 Apex Racing Academy AM leader, who right now, under that pressure from Jochen Siegert, is closing up as they roll their way through what is Porsche curves and into the Corvette curves they come. And as they do, it is the case the Irishman right now, under that increasing pressure, he'll know that BMW is going to inch closer with each and every corner. And as it does, it's going to be looking more and more menacing in the mirror. And to be fair to Darren Doherty, right now he has not got much place to defend other than the Ford chicanes, because soon we start to head into the power section of the circuit, which is the first half of the lap. And now, as they roll the way out of the chicane, we ride on board the gearbox here of the Lamborghini driver as he heads to the end of lap number 25. He goes on to lap 26 with what is 18 minutes remaining, and now he's got it all to do in terms of holding Jochen Siegert at bay for 18 minutes. That is a tall order. And given the fact I can tell you that Vin Glenn, after passing William Foyle for the lead in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, Vin Glenn has already in the BMW M4 put 7 seconds between himself and William Foyle. Will it be the case that Jochen Siegert is able to make it a quick and easy pass, or will the story be different here? I would argue that Doherty is going to make it the most difficult pass of what is Jochen Siegert's career, because as they make the way out of turns 4 and 5 and up towards Tetra Rouge corner at 6, it is the case here the Irishman would love to take a win in the season finale as they make the way now on to the main straight. And as they come charging on down, we've heard that Stefan Albanese has had to jump to the pits after an off-track due to damage to the car, and they roll their way on through here. And where is Sean Cranley Swash in all of this? Well, he is the best part of 2.1 seconds behind the pair, and as they make the way down here, you can see Cranley Swash in the distance. He will have his fingers crossed. He'll be muttering under his breath right now. Please, Darren, slow Jochen Siegert up, battle with him so I can get into this. Will that happen in practice? Well, the problem is for Darren Doherty here, he is clearing the first chicane. He's got Jochen Siegert very close behind, albeit a little bit of an understeer there on corner entry into the chicane has meant that Jochen Siegert has lost out quite drastically as they make the way down the second part of the straight. And as they come charging on down, it is one of those situations where I think for Siegert at this point, he is going to be thinking more about the run to Mulsanne corner, if not Indianapolis, because he's too far back at the moment to look for that potential move, and instead he's going to have to be patient. But to be fair, patience is key when overtaking on the straights here at Le Mans. It is the case you don't want to do it on the first straight, you want to do it on the final straight before you head into Indianapolis, because then you can try it to break open the gap through Arnage and of course through the Porsche Corvette curves and also the Ford chicanes. But we'll have to wait and see if that's how it works out as they now make the way down towards Mulsanne corner. As they make the way on down, I can tell you that Chris Daines is just coming into the pit lane once again. So Chris Daines making this a 3-stop race for Verano Motorsport, and that is going to promote Gaz Williams into the lead of the LMP2 Pro class. But as you can see it here, tucked in behind Darren Doherty as they make the way on out, and we ride on board here. You can see Darren Doherty already doing a little bit of a mini weave as they exit the Mulsanne corner and now head down the straight. And it's trying to break the toe early, just curb some of the Team Tetra Rouge drivers' momentum. And well, I can imagine that Darren Doherty at this point putting the car in the middle of the road. We've seen so many drivers put the GT3 in the middle of the road here to disrupt the momentum of the attacking driver. But I think you can see he'll be wise to this. He'll know about that. Instead, he just waits. He's being patient with this. But remember, the ground he doesn't gain now will be ground that Sean Cranley Swash gains behind, as it is the case that Sean Cranley Swash only 2 seconds back and trying to close on that. As we're hearing that Ed Lack has come into the pits as well. And as they roll their way through on Arch Corner, we now look from our top 3 in the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy class to Ed Lack, who's coming into the pit lane here. And as he makes his way on down, this will be his 3rd and final stop. Chris Daines has already done a 3rd stop. Will Gaz Williams have to make that stop as well? Keep in mind, of course, that Chris Daines right now is only the best part of 10 seconds off of the back of Gaz Williams, and therefore I think he will be feeling as though he can close that down with the time remaining. In fact, no, that is not the right gap. Our timing board's just been updated. In this case, the gap is 36.5 seconds. Well, if Gaz Williams is going for what is effectively the 2-stop versus Chris Daines on a 3-stop here, then Gaz Williams will take the win right now based on his current trajectory. He will be going slowly compared to Chris Daines, but there's not enough time left. Even if Chris Daines was going 3-4 seconds a lap faster, he hasn't got enough time. He's had to put, it's been a splash and dash. He was stationary for only 15 seconds. So in that charge to hunt down Williams and Lack, he's cost himself the ability to do a 2-stop here. But to be fair, Daines does love to go all in and give it his best shot. And I think right now, unless Williams comes into the pit or it's going to be running out of fuel on that final lap, Daines is looking at P2 at the most, and Ed Lack has come out of the pits after a splash and dash, and it's the same for Peter Herschel as well. A number of our LMP2 drivers being caught short on the fuel and needs to do that 3rd stop. Will Walton and Gaz Williams have to do the same? We will find out in due course. Paul Scott as well running in P2 in the LMP2 AM class. He finds himself in that position of having to run that 2-stop and therefore run a bit off the pace. But meanwhile, here is your conceit who's dropped behind Sean Cranley Swash. Now, how has this happened? Well, this was on the exit of, oh goodness me, I think that's a slowdown being served there by Sean, well, not by Sean Cranley Swash, my apologies, by Jürgen Siegert. And in fact, as they make the way out of what is the Ford chicane here and up towards Dunlop curve and into Dunlop chicane, I think it was the case that you can see it was serving a slowdown, and therefore Sean Cranley Swash has gained the position. But now, of course, that means that these 3 come back together, and you can see it here immediately as we cut back to the live pictures. Going on the offensive once again. He goes around, then Sean Cranley Swash not offering a defense, but he doesn't need to right now, to be fair, because they're only making their way down the first part of Mulsanne and into the first of the chicanes on the straight. And as they make their way on through the target, the prime feast, if you will, is that win. It's only 1.2 seconds up the road. It's in the hands of Darren Doherty right now. 12 minutes remaining plus that final lap. And as they head on down this time, it is the case that you can see it'll be hoping he's got the grunt to go after Doherty, but at the same time keep Cranley Swash at bay. And Cranley Swash, to be fair, just staying in behind right now, staying on that racing line. Will he weave to the inside? He thinks about it. Will he go for the move under brake? It's going to be side by side between the two of them. Cranley Swash does go for it in the end, albeit they swap places. I think, in fact, they're trying to work this out together in terms of that momentum switch. But to be fair, that switch of places has cost them 3 attempts to Darren Doherty. It's not working out to keep the gap to Darren Doherty or close it. It's opening that gap up, and Darren Doherty right now in a very firm position. As meanwhile, here's a surprise. It's Gaz Williams and Paul Walton into the pits. They couldn't make the 2-stop work. They're going to have to make a 3rd stop, and this will be Chris Daines who makes his way through the final corner here. And as he comes across the line, it will be the case that he's going to go hunting after Gaz Williams. Here's Williams. He's still in the pit lane. In fact, he exits his pit box, and Chris Daines comes on through to retake the LMP2 Pro lead with less. Oh, goodness me, that's the driver into the wall, and that's Lee Horn into the wall after coming out the pit lane, and Vin Glenn just missing Lee Horn there. To be fair, Lee Horn has got the car parked on the offside of the circuit. He's got the brakes on as well, so it won't roll back onto the circuit at the Dunlop chicane. But Lee Horn having a major whack to the wall. But we need to come back to our initial point, which is Chris Daines has re-inherited the lead of the LMP2 Pro class, with Gaz Williams having to make that pit stop. And in the meantime, Paul Scott also into the pits. So the 2-stop not possible for our LMP2 class drivers today. It is not able to go far enough on the fuel, as meanwhile we look from them to what happens to Lee Horn only moments to go. Because it's making its way up into the Dunlop curve here, turn number 1. It was a case of rolling the car in, and the rear just steps out there, and I think that's worn rear tyres, plus also the fact that damaged rear wing, it's not providing as much downforce on the rear of the car to keep the rear planted as he would like. And in the end, Lee Horn having a difficult day at Le Mans. That is one thing for certain. As we now come back to our live pictures, Paul Scott exits the pit lane in P2 in the LMP2 AM class, but we do look from him to Darren Doherty in the meantime, And we can see here that Darren Doherty leading in the GT3 and Apex Racing Academy classes. We saw him when we last left him. It is the case he's now got an advantage. Oh, goodness me, as you can see it, there goes very wide out of the Corvette curves. And Sean Cranny Swash is now 2 seconds off the leader. And you can see it will take a slowdown here. As you can see, he's losing a lot of time. That gap between himself and Sean Cranny Swash is only going to open up. And you can see it into the pits for another stop here. I think he's run out of fuel. I think he's used too much fuel up in his haste to take the win. And he's got to go for a quick splash and dash. We'll find out in due order, or whether it's a drive-through penalty for track limits. If it is a drive-through, that is a huge blow to his race, and a shame, because we were hoping for that three-way fight for the win in the GT3 and Apex Race, the Academy class, but I think a pit stop is on the cards here, and I think he's just used up too much fuel, which will promote Matthew Addy, who's had to really just wring the neck of this race to get back into contention, and it is the case, he's now up to P3, he's a bit far from the top two, I think, unless they have an instant between them, or one of them has a major off, and it is the case right now, Matthew Addy in an unexpected P3, as you can see that they had to take a quick splash and dash, only an 8-second stop. It is the case he's putting a quick bit of fuel to get himself to the end of the race. And what I think Matthew Addy right now will take this third place with open arms and say thank you very much, whoever's watching over me, as he makes his way up towards Tetra Rouge corner. As he makes his way into the right-hander here, it is the case we do look to our overall leader of Paul Walton. He is only leading, however, by 3 seconds ahead of Chris Staines. And on that last lap, well, Chris Staines, of course, was in the pit lane to take fuel to get him to the end. But Paul Walton right now, the RD Sim Sport driver, he'd love to take an overall win in the LMP2 class. Indeed, overall of all our classes here today. But Chris Staines is getting closer, corner by corner. And you can imagine right now, well, the Danishman, when we talked to him after his results at Suzuka, gave him what was the LMP2 Pro Championship crown with 2 rounds to go. He was saying he was in this one to set the marker, to be the guy that everybody wants to beat in future seasons, and it is the case that right now the Verano Motorsport driver, he's not happy to just take the win in the LMP2 Pro class today. He wants to take the win in the LMP's overall, and that overall win as well, such as what he's known for over the course of this season, as he comes across that timeline ahead of all the spectators in the stands, and as he makes his way up towards turns 2 and 3 at this point. It is the case that Chris Staines right now pushing on that last lap. Chris Staines at 3:32.48 versus Walton's 4:11. But to remember that Paul Walton was in the pits to take that splash and dash of fuel, so it is the case those 2 laps are not equivalent. But what I can tell you is that it's the case that Chris Staines' in lap and out laps was slightly faster by 2 seconds versus Paul Walton. So he's breathing down the neck of his rival. As meanwhile, speaking of one driver who's not breathing down the neck of their rival, Nigel Stock here, the Crest Autosport Apex Tracks driver, after a difficult start, he's found himself spinning out at Indianapolis. What has happened to the GT3 AM driver? Making his way into the corner here, and we ride on board into Indianapolis. Is he coming a bit too hot? I think it's the case. No, in fact, he's coming a bit too much speed. The car's run wide there. It's understeered wide, and as he's gone onto the gravel, the car's just simply come loose. As we'd expect, there's not as much grip there on the gravel surface as there is with the tarmac. And what a difficult day for Nigel Stock, only being made more difficult with less than 10 minutes to go. But as we come back to live pictures, we now look to Jochen Seeger, who has got behind him there what is Tristan Dino Brega, and the P2 driver in the GT3 IMB Raceway class. Well, he right now wants to pass Jochen Seeger, but he won't need to in order to be able to take the championship crown. As we understand it, all he needs to do is finish in P2, and he will safely take that crown, and that's all he needs to do here today. Jochen Seeger will defend into Indianapolis. They're going to battle under braking here, but in the end, Dino Brega finds his way round, and Jochen Seeger tucks in behind. A smart move there from both drivers. Indeed, a brave move from Tristan Dino Brega to go round the outside, but getting it done. And now will we see a potential comeback move into the Porsche curves with not long remaining in this race. I think if it is going to be a return move here from Jochen Seeger, he may wait until the next lap, given the fact that right now it's going to be the case he'll be going into a zone where that BMW is going to struggle compared to the Ferrari, and that is the Porsche into the Corvette curves as they roll their way on through. As they head on in, you can see Dino Brega, they're going defensive. You can see it's going to look to the outside here, but indeed back off and wait for that opportunity later on in the lap. But this is the closest battle on circuit at the moment in terms of between 2 drivers, albeit of different classes, and therefore battling for overall position only. But as we can see, they make their way up through the Corvette curves now and into what will be the Ford chicanes in due course. And Tristan Dino Brega definitely feeling a bit of pressure here from the German driver behind us, the South African, and just wanting to be on his merry way, as we're hearing that Lee Horn has come into the pit lane to repair damage to the car, I do believe. That's my understanding. And, well, Paul Scott has found his way past Ed Lack for a P4 overall, and in the LMP2 class overall. That's no change in subclass position in terms of Paul Scott is still P2 in the LMP2 AM class. But you can see as they exit the Ford chicanes, you can see it falling back from Tristan Dienebrega. Indeed, Dienebrega now going on to seal his destiny as the GT3 AM IMB Raceway winner. But as we do look from them to our leader overall here is Paul Walton, the RD Simsport driver, and in the rear of the picture, and we can see them running wide, and that's going to be a slowdown, we believe. That'll be Chris Daines, who right now is trying to hunt down the overall win. But to be fair, that gap between himself and Paul Walton is opening up. It's going to open up to at least 4 seconds by the time he exits the Ford chicanes, and well, that is going to stem his momentum, what should be stint his momentum massively as he makes his way out of the Ford chicanes here. 2 laps to go as they come on through. They go on to lap 33. There will be a 34th lap at their rate of pace, and right now Chris Daines, who is looking the faster of the two, he's going to think about backing it off as oh goodness me, he loses the rear there into Dunlop chicane. That shows you how aggressively he's driving now. He really wants that win, but I can imagine he might be also having a little voice in his head right now saying, well, calm it down a little bit. I know you want the win, but don't push it that hard, otherwise you'll be binning it with not very long to go. He's showing that he's trying to do a bit everything, but in doing so, I think he's giving it a bit too much now in terms of trying to put the foot to the floor and just take as much pace as he can. But meanwhile, we do a look from what is Chris Daines there to Gaz Williams behind, who in P2 in the LMP2 Pro class is 6 seconds off of Chris Daines. He'll be hoping, of course, that Chris Daines does make some extra mistakes in order to close up and battle for the win in class come the end. As he makes his way down the Mulsanne straight here, we do look to Peter Herschel as he makes his way for the Porsche curves. He's tucked in behind Matthew Hodges right now. As they roll the way out of the curves, once he passes Hodges, he'll be going hunting after Ed Lack as they head on. Oh, goodness me! And, well, was that looked as though that was netcode contact, alternatively attacked to the grass. But that was a very awkward moment there for Peter Herschel and Matthew Hodges. We take a look back. Was they're making them out the corner now. This is where the moment of contention occurs. It was a tiny tap there between Hodges and Peter Herschel, and well, in the end, Matthew Hodges, well, I think he felt as though Peter Herschel should have waited perhaps to come through the kink before the Ford chicanes, and the Verano Motorsport driver wanted to come through in earnest there, and well, that is one that I think is going to go to the Stewards post race. That was a very odd bit of contact there, not too much contact, but what there was sent the Verano Motorsport driver into the wall, albeit a brief tap to the wall. He's not going to be too happy about that one as we now return to the live pictures, but just behind him that is Gavin Gardner, who right now running in P5 in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. And in terms of that team's championship, who's going to be on the top step, I do believe that with Verano Motorsport having Chris Daines as the leader in the LMP2 Pro class right now, and the fact they do have Gavin Gardner P5 and Sean Cranny-Swash P2 in their respective classes, they will be your champions in the team's championship, as sponsored by Mark Sykes Designs. They haven't got long to go. The time is still ticking down, of course, and as it continues to tick down is the case, we're almost on the verge of crowning our outstanding champions here in the season finale. But as we do look back to what is now Vin Glen, well, I can definitely say one thing right now. If this driver, Vin Glen, had been in the series since the start, oh, how I think Martello would have had not just Matthew Hodges to contend with, but also Vin Glen, in the fact that the Deutsche Payment Esports driver, since making those passes for second for the lead, is the case, he's just left everybody behind. He's just absolutely flying, and that pace being delivered is absolutely sensational. I can tell you that he doesn't own the fastest lap in class. That is in the hands of William Fault, a 53.29. But to be fair, Vin Glen, whilst he may not have the fastest lap, he has something bigger in his pocket, and that is a race win. I think he could say the strategy worked out perfectly, and indeed his pace in that BMW has been absolutely stellar, as he's not got long to go. The leaders have gone into the final lap, and so it will be the case that we will have one more lap for our GT3 class leaders as well, as they make their way on around. The GT3s on their 30th lap right now, and we're looking to do a 31st lap. But we do look from our leader in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class to our leader in what it... Oh, hold up a second. Our leader in the LMP2 Pro class is into the pits again. Kristains comes on in here. I wonder whether that moment that he had has done damage to the tyres on the car, and indeed, well, he's coming in. Perhaps he's got to take another little bit of fuel, but this is going to deny him the win in the LMP2 Pro class as he parks up there. I think it's going to be a quick stop, just a splash and dash. Indeed, it's a 5.45 second stop. It is the case they're just putting fuel in. He underfueled, and from pushing, well, in fact, he underfueled to push so hard to go hunting after the overall win, and that means right now, as he makes his way through Tetrarouge here, in an unexpected turn of events, but a welcome one for Next Gen Racing, Gaz Williams is now your leader in class, and well, on the final lap, I think he'll be thinking to himself, well, I'm going to take this one to the finish. Kristains will still be in P2 in the LMP2 Pro class. That will still mean that Verano Motorsport will be your team's championship winners as things currently stand. But that's an unexpected twist, but still, I think a sign of where Gaz Williams has just kept his head down and tried to deliver round in, round out, and whilst it hasn't always worked out, he's definitely a deserving second place finisher in what is the LMP2 Pro class, as sponsored by Apex Racing Academy, as he now makes his way down the Mulsanne for the final time. As he comes running on down here, it is the case that we look from Gaz Williams to what is a bit further down the order, and Dan Skinner here coming in P5, the last running driver in the LMP2 Pro class. It's the case he hasn't had luck on his side, but he's kept his head down and done everything he can to the finish. And as he makes his way now through into Mulsanne corner, it's been a championship campaign with highs and lows, but definitely a lot of positives to take away and some areas for improvement. But the Excite Racing driver now only moments away from finishing his race here today at Le Mans. It is the case he will have one more lap, what with Paul Walton being behind him. And here is Paul Walton, your overall leader right now, on his final lap and trying to bring it home, as the RD Simsport driver's not got long to go. And well, right now everything is looking on the sunny side for Paul Walton. The sun's out, of course, it's shining, and it's Paul Walton's day in the spotlight here, as he is looking on course to take that overall win in what is the LMP2 class, overall out of all the classes, and of course the LMP2 AM class win as well. And that will be the first time he's taken the overall win, and he'll be very happy to have done it in the season finale in emphatic fashion, as he makes his way now into Arnage. But as he comes down into the very slow right-hander, runs a little bit deep there but keeps it together nicely, we do look from Paul Walton to our drivers a bit further down, in particular Lorenzo Gualtieri here, who right now leading in the IMB Raceway GT3 AM class. And the Racing Team Astra Orange driver has done everything right today. He hasn't put a foot wrong, but it's just the case. The way the point standings were going into tonight, he needed Tristan Di Nobrega to finish lower than P2. He needed Di Nobrega to finish P3 or lower, and it is the case. It's not heading that way, and now it is just bringing it to the end. And well, just wrapping up a championship in second place. And you had to ask, if you'd been a bit more consistent in the opening couple of rounds, would it have gone the other way around? That's something, as well as what ifs. But meanwhile, one thing that is certain, it's not a what if. There's only a couple more corners to go for Paul Walton, as the RD Simsport driver here makes his way for the first of 4 chicanes. He heads into the second one, and as he comes out the final 2 corners here, it will be Paul Walton from RD Simsport who takes the checkered flag at Le Mans, taking the win overall and in the LMP2 AM class, cementing a fantastic championship campaign. And there's Gaz Williams, who in an unexpected turn of events, but one he'll be very happy with, he'll take the win in the LMP2 Pro class for Next Gen Racing. Behind him, that is Tristan Di Nobrega, who crosses the line P2 in the GT3 AM IMB Raceway class, but he is your championship winner in said class when all is said and done for Racing Team Astra Blue. And then we do have to wait for our next driver to come on through, which will be, in terms of our winning driver, it will be Kristains, who, as he makes his way through the final 2 chicanes, the Verano Motorsport driver didn't have enough in the tank today to be able to take the win in his class or the overall win, but it is the case as he creeps the line here, having run out of fuel. He'll keep us in suspense whether he'll make it to the line, and there he does. It is the case. He is your winner in the LMP2 Pro Championship, crowned back in what was round number 10, but your deserved winner all the same. And now we do wait for our winners in the other classes to come on through, and well, we do start off with here Vin Glenn from Deutsche Payment Esports as he makes his way through the Porsche curves here, keeping it on the straight and narrow as he rolls his way through the corners. And well, Vin Glenn, it has to be said, as he makes his way to the end of the Corvette curves, not long to go now. This has been a race which I think has demonstrated the pace, the strategic nuances, and indeed the tenacity of the Deutsche Payment Esports driver, as he's only got 2 chicanes to go, plus Ed Lack behind, who I think is going to wait behind him. And as he makes his way for the first chicane, it looks nice and smooth. He makes his way for the second chicane, it looks even smoother. And as he comes on out here, Vin Glenn will be your winner in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class in a brilliant drive for Deutsche Payment Esports, and then we will have shortly coming on through to take the win in his class, as I understand. No, he's quite a way away, to be fair, and there's been quite a change in positions. We'll have to take a look at that in short order, but in the meantime, here comes William Foyle, who I think has run out of fuel. No, he's got it wrong there, coming through the final chicane, but he'll come home P2 in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class, and then behind him, flashing his lights all the way to finish. I think he's been involved in some contact right at the end, but it's not going to matter if he gets that checkered flag, of which he will do. He comes home P3 today, and Carmelo Mettello is your winner in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy Championship. He takes the championship crown ahead of Matthew Hodges, who in the end took the fight to Martello today, but it was enough to beat him. He'll finish P2 in the championship as he flashes lights there for 6R Project Black. He'll be happy all the same with his performance, and as he makes his way down to the line, it will be the case that we then look to what will be Sean Cranley-Swash, who's making his way out of Arnage. He's still got a way to go, but in the meantime, we say Matt Emmons here. Whilst he had the contact with Nigel Stock, I can imagine, even after a steward's verdict, it will go his way. And Matt Emmons, subject to steward's confirmation, is your winner in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy Championship. It won't have gone the way he wanted it to do today, but it is the case. He's got it done. And then Lorenzo Gualtieri, whilst he won't be the championship winner in the end in the IMB Raceware GT3 AM class, he'll still be the winner at Le Mans in a brilliant drive. There's been no mistakes, no faults, and the Racing Team Astra Orange driver should be proud of what he's achieved here today in an absolutely dominant display. It just wasn't to be enough in the end to seal and take the championship away from Tristan Dienebrega, his rival teammate, but still a brilliant drive from Lorenzo Gualtieri. We still have some drivers coming on through, and here is Sean Cranley-Swash, ladies and gentlemen. He makes his way through the final two corners, and the Verano Motorsport driver in the end found his way past Darren Doherty, past Matthew Addy, and he takes the win in the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class. We'll try and get a replay of the pass that was made shortly, but a brilliant drive from Cranley-Swash, and that win cements Verano Motorsport's win in the Teams Championship, sponsored by Mark Sykes Design. It is the case Verano Motorsport have been on top of the proceedings throughout this season, where it's Cranley-Swash in the AM class of the GT3s, where it be Gavin Gardner in the Pro class of the GT3s, alternatively Chris Daines. They put in a brilliant effort all the way through, and then we do look to Darren Doherty, who in the end was pushed across the line by Matthew Addy, and that's beautiful to see. It's the case that is Darren Doherty on a race that he wasn't expected to take part in today. He finished P2 ahead of Matthew Addy, who pushed him across, I think, for P3. We just take a look back with regards to the pass that was made for the win of the GT3 AM Apex Race Academy class, and here it was between Sean Cranley-Swash and Darren Doherty, and in the end it was made in the run down Mulsanne on the final lap. It's Sean Cranley-Swash on the left, meanwhile Darren Doherty on the right, and as they make the way all the way on down here into the charge, into the first chicane, you can see Cranley-Swash getting ahead there. I think Darren Doherty was worried about fuel before they got into the braking zone here and back there. You can see how much he's backed off there before they've actually made the apex. And it was, I think, at the end that Cranley-Swash had the fuel to go on, because as he left the corner there, you can see he's just leaving Darren Doherty behind, and there was no return attempt at a move. It was the case that Cranley-Swash was able to get on through, but as we now look back to our live pictures, it is the case that all of our drivers have made the checker flag, and it is now time for us to bring you those race results, subject to stewards' inquiries, of course. So in the end, after 2 hours of racing in the final round, round 12 of the Next Gen Racing Proto GT3 Championship, has brought to you on iRacing, sponsored by Apex Racing Academy and also IMB Raceware. At Circuit, there's 24 Heures du Mans. It is the case that Paul Walton taking the overall win in the end by 9.2 seconds ahead of Gaz Williams. Chris Daines P3 to make the overall podium in the LMP2 class, and then Paul Scott and Ed Lack to complete the LMP2s in the top 5. Peter Shell P6, Stefan Vessels P7, and Dan Skinner wrapping up the LMP2s there, finishing in the top 10 in P8, and then Vin Glenn taking that win in the overall GT3s and the win in his pro class there for the GT3 Apex Racing Academy in P9, ahead of William Foyle and Carmelo Mettello to wrap up what was the GT3 overall podium. Now, as we look to the individual classes, in the case, we start with the LMP2 Pro class, and we see here Gaz Williams in taking that win ahead of Chris Daines, who made that last-minute unexpected pit stop for fuel, and Ed Lack wrapping up the podium in the LMP2 Pro class. Of course, Chris Daines being your champion as crowned 2 rounds ago. Peter Shell P4, Dan Skinner P5, and then the retirees of Robert DeSunic, Phil McDougall, and Jamie Dorey. We then look to the LMP2 AM class, and it is the case there that Paul Walton taking the win by 1 minute and 16 seconds ahead of Paul Scott and Stefan Vessels in a day which just hasn't been his day of of racing, coming home in P3, all three of them being on the podium. And then we do look to our GT3 classes, starting with the Apex Racing Academy GT3 Pro class. And we can see Vin Glenn in the end taking that win by 22.5 seconds in that absolute charge on his final stint, ahead of William Vogt and Carmelo Mettello. That third place for Carmelo Mettello, ahead of Matthew Hodges, cementing his championship crown in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy class. Congratulations to him. Matthew Hodges P4, Gavin Gardner P5, and then Stefan Albanese and Lee Horn wrapping up the proceedings there. And then as we come to the GT3 Pro, well, in fact, we didn't have the GT3 Pro IMB Racewear class here today, so we jump ahead to the GT3 AM Apex Racing Academy class. And it's the case that Sean Cranley Swash, with that move on the last lap with enough fuel in the car and measuring this race to the distance, took the win by 15.2 seconds ahead of Darren Doherty, who I am hearing was pushed across the line by Matthew Addy to finish ahead of Addy. But to be fair, in fact, no, he ran out of fuel at the line because of the gap between the two of them at 3 seconds. So my apologies about that. But Darren Doherty P2, Matthew Addy P3, and you can see at P4. And that 5th place in the end, I believe there's some sort of penalty that's been applied to Matt Emmons. But still, that 5th place for Matt Emmons finishing ahead of Nigel Stock cements his championship crown, albeit there may be a bit of a stewards discussion with regards to that instant between the two of them on the opening lap, so we will wait for the stewards verdict there. But I do think it is Matt Emmons' crown going through this round. And then it is the case we come to our GT3 AM IMB Racewear class. And as we do, it is the case that Lorenzo Gualtieri taking the win by a lap ahead of Tristan Di Nobrega, and Elwin Sykes completing the podium after the return due to the power cut, and Davide Favo finishing 4th in class. Well, that is all of our racing here today at the Le Mans circuit, and we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, for our post-round interviews. We'll just have to give our drivers a moment, but when we come back, you won't want to miss them. So we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and ready to kick off our post-round interviews with our 4 selected drivers. And it's the case we'll be starting off very shortly with Paul Walton, our LMP2 AM driver, who took the win, of course, both in his class and overall in an absolutely start-to-finish drive. And as we bring him into the interview room, it is the case he joins us now. Paul, a brilliant drive from start to finish, and what a way to wrap up the season after being crowned the LMP2 AM champion last time out, and now picking up your first overall win. How's it feel to have won at Le Mans?
I think I woke my neighbors up. That was so good.
Oh, indeed. And just taking us through it, of course, having to start from what was effectively the back of the LMP2s and cipher your way through the order. What was your strategy going into this race?
Don't take damage. Save fuel. Win.
Well, indeed, quite a straightforward strategy there, but at the same time, over 2 hours of racing, you made it pay dividends. And I do have to ask, with regards to the incident that we saw happen in the opening couple corners at the Dunlop chicane, where Peter Herschel was sent flying across the circuit and Jamie Dorey was pointing the wrong way, were you worried that you were going to pick up damage straight away? Because it looked a nasty incident.
Yeah, I was like, oh, here we go. The on lap 1 of Le Mans, no matter what class of car you drive in, someone's always gonna send it, and it's just never gonna end well. So that's not the first time, and it's not the last time that I'll see an incident like that. But luckily, I got out of it, and I got a really good run, like afterwards. So I'm really happy with that.
Now, speaking of that run, of course, getting a good run and fighting your way up there for the opening stint in particular, battling within the top 5 of the LMP2s overall, really battling with the likes of Gaz Williams, Chris Daines as well, Ed Lack and company. What was the goal within that? Was it a case of you're trying to do some fuel saving or try to outpace them? Just take us through what your plan was, because you very quickly got to the front.
So in the first maybe 1 or 2 laps, I was trying to get to, I think it was either 9 or 10 laps per stint. And then afterwards, I realized there's no chance of stopping this. So at that point, I kind of threw the fuel saving out the window and just started pushing to the front. Because at that point, you just can work at your own pace and you don't really need to worry about the fuel saving for the extra laps. We were kind of fortunate that nobody could have done it. It was near enough impossible. So I didn't have anything to worry about somebody like massively undercutting me on fuel saving.
And we did see that. We were questioned over the course of the race in the commentary box here with regards to whether it be a potential 2-stop, and in the end, you say that 2-stop proving impossible. But after you recognised it, we really did see that pace amplify from yourself. And I was asked, when you came out the pits after the first round of pit stops, leading not just the LMP2 AM class, but overall, do you sort of have to pinch yourself in that point and think, you know what, I'm beating the likes of Chris Daines and Gaz Williams here, the drivers who have been really in the spotlight?
Well, unfortunately, at that point, we weren't even a third of the way through the race. So I was like, oh God, it's going to be a long 2 hours at that point. And it was. It was a very, very, very long 2 hours. And I'm just glad I made it on the other side of it. And I won. So I'm really, really happy with that.
Oh, indeed. And, well, I appreciate you've woken up your neighbours, probably with regards to the celebrations as you crossed the line. But just take us through that last half an hour in particular, because we saw everybody have to make the third stop. And we saw Chris Daines really putting his foot down after that third stop to try and close down yourself. I think he was taking about 1.5 seconds a lap out of your lead. Were you starting to think, oh, goodness, I've got to defend now for the final 10 minutes?
Well, I was honestly terrified. In my last pit stop, I think I came into the pits. Well, before we'd both stopped, I was about 7 seconds clear of him. And then after we had both stopped, that gap was about 2 seconds. So I thought, oh, oh no, I'm gonna lose. But as I started going through it in my head, I realized I've fueled pretty much exactly as much as I need. He's underfueled by a lot. So at that point, I just kind of kept my head down, kept pushing, and just hoped to God that he would go back into the pits. And he did. So I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, indeed. Well, I can only imagine the joy with regards to that result. And indeed, crossing the line, it must have been a wonderful moment for yourself. And really, what a championship has been, filled with wonderful moments. And really, we have seen phenomenal performances. But if you had to look back over the 12 rounds, what has been your one round which you're always going to remember moving forward?
Road Atlanta. That's probably my favorite track in this sim, and with this car as well, I just love it. It's so much fun to drive. It never feels like a chore. It just is such an awesome race, and I absolutely smashed that as well. So if you're gonna do another league, Apex, could you please put that track in, because I'll be very happy.
Well, we can look at doing that at next gen here, although a bit
Sorry,
more.
next gen. Apologies.
No worries, but there might be a word about upcoming leagues later in today's show. But focus on yourself, Paul, of course, our champion, our deserved champion in the LMP2 AM class. And just before we let you go, is there anyone you'd like to say a thank you to or give a shout out to live on air?
My mum, my dad, and my auntie. They've been ever since I joined back into this league. They've been following all of the races. I'm just really grateful for all my friends and family. It's been really fun, and I'm really grateful for all the other drivers as well. Everybody's been really good, really respectful. A couple incidents here and there where, I mean, racing's racing. People get angry at each other. It happens, but I'm just really happy. It's been awesome.
Well, indeed. And well, I'm sure all of your family will really appreciate it. And we've appreciated them tuning in, week out in the Facebook chat. But it is the case for yourself, Paul. I must again once say congratulations, not only on your overall win today and taking the fight to the field and coming out on top, but also being our LMP2 AM champion as sponsored by IMB Racewear for this season of the Proto GT3 Championship. Congratulations. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavours.
Thanks, man. I hope to be able to talk to you like this again soon.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Our paths will cross again. But until then, have a great night and enjoy that celebration.
You too, man. Bye bye.
Bye. So hearing there from Paul Walton, very happy. You can hear it there in his voice. I think it might be the case he hasn't got much of a voice left given the celebrations he probably had when he crossed that finish line. But it is one of those situations where he's over the moon with regards to how things have come out. And it's interesting he called upon Road Atlanta as the one round he'll always remember from this league. I thought he would have picked today, but looking back in my mind and playing the tapes back, it is the case Road Atlanta was a dominant performance from Paul Walton, really just flowing through every single corner and flying. And you can understand why that will stay in his mind. Indeed, if we do see him come back in a future next-gen racing series, he'll be one to watch out for. A very fast driver, whether he's in an LMP or a GT3, and I can imagine he'll be looking to carry that momentum forward strong, but a deserved champion at that, and standing tall at the top of the LMP2 AM class. But now we come from our LMP2 AM class champion to our LMP2 Pro class champion for the interview room, as we just bring him on in. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. And it is the case as we now look to Chris Staines. It's one of those situations whereby I think Chris today wanted to try and get that overall win, but in the end, and in fact that says he came home in first place in the feature. That's not to be, and my apologies for that. That is a slight error on our side. Coming home in second place in the end. One of those situations whereby it didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, and in the process he sacrificed the win. But he may as well have gone for it. Let's bring him on in and hear his thoughts. So as we bring Chris into the interview room, Chris, a day I think where you wanted to go hunting after the overall win and threw everything at it in the process, and it wasn't to be. I think you enjoyed the art of the chase. Am I right, or was Le Mans not quite the way you wanted it to be?
No, listen, it was great. I mean, trying to catch Paul at the end there. I mean, that dude's got some pace, hasn't he? I mean, he's got some serious pace, and I was throwing everything at it to try and catch him. So, and the thing is with Le Mans one of these tracks where either you go flat out and forget about the fuel saving, and then try and pull that gap from people behind you so you sort of negate that fuel saving, or you do a lot of fuel saving. And I don't know how much fuel Paul was saving, but at the end of the day, he was super quick, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed trying to chase him down at the end there. It was really fun.
Oh, indeed. We could see you enjoying it. And I think, well, as we spoke to Paul Walton there, I think he was fretting at the pace you were delivering right at the end before that fourth pit stop. But just winding it all the way back to the start, a very dramatic start in the race involving the next gen racing driver, Jamie Dorey, and your teammate from Verano Motorsport of Peter Schell. And we saw you feel a little bit out of sequence in the opening course. Just take us through what happened on that opening lap, 'cause it looked like it was a bit of an awkward start.
Yeah, very awkward. Biting my tongue a little bit here. Obviously, I've seen the replay myself, so I'm not going to say too much about it. But it seemed as though lap one, turn one of a 2-hour race with cold tyres and cold brakes, it's just sending it on the inside of a turn where the next turn's a left-hander. It just doesn't fit. So unfortunately, it took my teammate out of the race. Went across the grass, and I run triple screens. You see, so I'm not in VI. I run triple screens, and where Jamie was at that particular point when he was crossing the grass was right on my pillar, in between my screens, and that pillar sits pretty much on the join of my first and second screen, and I couldn't see his car, so I thought he had stopped on the grass already. I didn't realise he was still rolling. So I've taken my normal line, thinking I saw his car on the grass. I thought he'd stopped in time, and he's just come flying out to the circuit. And unfortunately, it's collected another second Verano car. So yeah, frustrated because it gave me a lot of drag, a lot of damage. So I had a lot of drag down the straight. So my fuel strategy was just out the window for the rest of the race. That it was done because there was no way I was going to save any fuel because I was using so much more fuel than everybody else because of the drag I got. And I knew straight away from there on in it was going to be a miracle for me to get the overall win at least. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how I went about. It's just a bit frustrating how I went about getting my result in the end there. So yeah.
Oh, indeed. And well, it was a difficult start, but a very strong recovery from yourself. And all the way through in that recovery, we saw you pushing hard, albeit there was a moment where it went a little bit wrong into Indianapolis, where you hit the tyre barrier, albeit able to get back racing. Was that not a knock to your confidence at all? Because it was almost as if that spurred you on even more.
Yeah, I made a mistake. I was pushing. Look, listen, I was pushing so hard. Like I said, after the first stint, when I have a plan before every single endurance race, even the 1-hour races we do, the small 1-hour races. And when it goes belly up lap one, I just like for today, I just push. I just forgot about fuel saving. I weren't interested anymore in fuel saving. I just wanted to push as hard as I can. And as soon as I got past, I think it was Ed Lack at the end, around the outside of Indianapolis. Yeah, unfortunately there was no grip there, and I've just blood rush to the head and hit the brakes a bit too hard. A bit of an uncharacteristic mistake for myself. So yeah, I was screaming at myself after that. So I put myself another 8 seconds down. I think overall I lost about 40 seconds in that race with incidents and hitting walls and things like that. So yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated in myself, but do you know what? It's been great racing from everyone all year, and admins have done a solid job with this league. It's been so fun, regardless, and I can't complain too much for coming second overall in class because that would just sound a bit elitist from me. But it's not like that at all. Obviously, you have to understand when I'm racing, I just want the best for myself. I want to do the best that I feel I can do, and tonight I don't think I delivered myself personally.
Oh, indeed. And I don't think anybody can begrudge you. I do remember when we talked after your wins, well, your results at Suzuka sealed your place as our champion in the LMP2 Pro class. You're saying you're out there for every bit of silverware and putting that target on your back of being the driver to beat. So I think we can all appreciate where you're coming from. And just talking about really that latter portion of the race, hunting down Paul Walton, we saw, of course, all the LMP2 drivers had to make that third stop because the fuel wasn't going to make it on the 2 stop. But it looks as though in the process they're hunting so furiously and ripping the time out and just not enough fuel to get you to the end.
So the plan was I probably shouldn't say this because I actually sacrificed the P1 in the pro class because I underfueled, hoping that the overall leader Paul Walton would spin out and crash under the pressure that I was putting him under, which meant if he did that, I was going to back up and make it 3 laps to go, not 4 laps to go. So I was hoping he was gonna he was gonna spin out, so I could take the lead, and then I was going to bring the laps down to 3 and not push it to 4. But he held his own and he done such a good job. And yeah, unfortunately. So I'm just laughing at myself because I realised how much of a stupid mistake it was by underfueling at the end there, because I threw away a P1 in class by underfueling. So that was my own fault. Hands up to that one. That was my own fault, because I was really wanted that overall win, and really I should have just thought of the P1 in class.
Well, still, despite not getting the P1 in the end in class, it is the case that with you coming home in P2, and indeed your teammates finishing well today, including Sean Cranny-Swash taking the win in the GT3 AM class, sponsored by Apex Racing Academy, and Gavin Garner coming home P5 in the Pro class of the GT3s. It is the case that Verano Motorsport stand at the top of the pile in the Teams Championship as Teams Champions. What are your thoughts on that? It's been a phenomenal season from your team, I have to say.
Yeah, like I said before, I mean, I'm so proud of these guys because, like, we've only been together a few months. The team's only been going a few months, like since March, I think it was. And yeah, I'm just super proud of all the guys, even the guys that aren't in this league that you don't see. So the Brano drivers behind the scenes that are even now they're prepping for the for the Spa 24 hour coming up in a couple of weeks' time. They're all prepping for that. They're putting laps into that, and you know, it's just such a humble feeling when you create a team. You get drivers together that you've never met these drivers before, but you all become really good friends, and you're chatting every day to each other on Discord, whether it's voice chat or text chat or whatever, and everyone has the same experience, everyone in all teams. But I'm so proud of these guys because this is the first championship we've entered, and we've come away in top position, so we're obviously doing something right. I tried to give the guys as much information and help as much as possible, so I do hope I'm leading them in the right direction. And judging by where we've come in the championship, then it seems like we're doing the right thing. So yeah, just super proud of the guys. Really, really proud of all my drivers here, even the ones that aren't in the league at the moment. So it's a big shout out to everyone.
Well, indeed, it does seem like it's a very happy atmosphere down in the Verano Motorsport Garage week in, a week out, and that is being demonstrated in the results that you guys are achieving. And to that end, Chris, before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say a thank you to or give a shout out to live on air tonight?
Yeah, again, just echo what I said before. Just big shout out to all the drivers in Verano Motorsport, all my teammates who have entered this league to put Verano on top. Once again, NXTGEN Racing, big shout out to those guys for putting on an amazing championship all season long. Consistency throughout the championship as well. So big shout out to everyone there. Mark Sykes Designs as well, sponsoring this league and doing my paints for my team. Scruffy Bear Pictures, good mate of mine, Darren from Scruffy Bear Pictures, who does all the video editing for our team. And Sim Stickers, who supply all the stickers for our wheelbases and button boxes, and everyone, and also yourself, Paul, for bringing such awesome commentary and broadcasts every week, as usual.
Oh, well, I'm sure everybody you've mentioned there will appreciate it, and I do appreciate it as well, and that's no problem, Chris. It's always a pleasure. But with that, I'm very happy to say thank you for joining me in the interview, Chris, and congratulations to you for being our LMP2 Pro Class Champion as sponsored by Apex Racing Academy, and congratulations to Verano Motorsport for being our Teams Champions as sponsored by Mark Sykes Designs. Congratulations on both frontiers, and we look forward to seeing Verano Motorsport and yourself take to the Next Gen Series in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks a lot, Paul, and hopefully we'll see you in season 2.
Oh, fingers crossed. But until then, all the best.
See you later. Bye-bye.
So hearing that from Chris Staines, and you could hear that mixture of emotions there with Chris Staines. Very proud of what the team have achieved and proud of the recovery drive today after that difficult start. But the inner racer within him still wanting that over win, and I can completely understand that. It's that inner beast, if you will, that always wants to take over. You always want to go one step further in terms of your racing. But to be fair, Daines put his hand up and said what his strategy was. It was quite a rather dark strategy in terms of hoping that the pressure he would put on Paul Walton would essentially cause Walton to make a mistake, and therefore Daines would be able to reduce the number of laps in the race by 1. But sometimes you take a gamble with it. It was a dangerous gamble. It didn't work out, but still, he didn't have to worry about losing out the championship in the end, so he went for it, and that's the inner racer coming on through. But to be fair, the ethic at Verano Motorsport, where it's Chris Daines, Sean Cranny-Swash, or Gavin Garner, or Peter Urshel, they're definitely demonstrating a working commitment there, and it's working out very well, and that's why they are deserved teams champions. But we must now come from our Verano Motorsport driver to our 6 CXR Project Black driver of Matthew Hodges in what has been a great championship campaign. And well, let's hear from the driver in the GT3 Apex Racing Academy Pro class. So as we bring him into the interview room here, Matthew, a day today where you could have taken the championship in rather adverse circumstances, but it wasn't to be, but still a 4th place in the end sees you P2 in the GT3 Pro Championship. A good day at Le Mans, or one that could have been a bit better?
Solid enough. It's not one of my favourite tracks. I kind of echo Ed with that, but it's one you can drive around for a prolonged period without making too many mistakes. I was quite lucky. The slowdowns, I got one slowdown. So I noticed Vin got a couple in front of me from time to time, which gave me a bit of probably a little bit of false hope that I could stick with him. But I managed to. I had initial contact. Lap 1, Gavin and I came together. I didn't notice it at the time because it was quite tight. We were all going into at the end of the Mulsanne Straight into the hairpin at the end, and it was very close. And Carmelo braked, and I had to brake as well, and ever so slightly moved to the left. And I then was looking forward, and Gavin was behind me. And then when I came out of the corner onto the straight, he wasn't. And I look back, and we did have slight contact through just moving in the braking just to avoid me hitting the back of Carmelo. But apologies for that to Gavin, because we've been running close all season. But it was all right. All right. I managed to get it round without any spins or accidents or off tracks. So I'll take that.
Oh, indeed. And well, talking about the race and really not just the start, but all the way through, we saw in that first stint a very close battle between yourself, Carmelo Martello, also what was there, I believe it was Vin Glenn getting involved into the mix, and a whole train and mix of GT3 class cars. Everybody slipstreaming off of one another, everyone doing fuel saving. Where were you in all that in terms of your strategy? Was it one of those cases where you tried to do a lot of fuel saving, or were you sort of along for the ride in terms of just getting in the slipstream train?
Slipstream train was keeping me involved. I was not able to fuel save because Vin had just more pace. When I did get past Carmelo, there was a few points where he was a little bit slower on a couple of sections, and I believe he was fuel saving. And I thought, well, I'm going to stick it and I'm going to go past. But then when I got past, he sat behind me 0.3 of a second for the first stint. And I knew he was fuel saving. There's nothing I could do. And I was going as fast as I can. And he absolutely had more pace than me. But he patiently sat behind me, and I could hear him lifting, dropping back, and there's nothing I could do. But I was, foot to the floor, trying to just keep up with the cars in front to try and maybe get back in the slipstream. But that dropped. But yeah, Carmelo was along for the ride for the first stint. But fair play, he played a blinder there. And then when we came out, he had an extra lap. He came out ahead of me, about 4 seconds ahead of me. Then 5 seconds on the pit exit. And at that point, I knew it was that was it then.
Oh, indeed. But still, you kept your head down and pressed on in what would eventually become a P4 finish. And that P4 finish, enough to secure you second place in the championship behind Carmelo Martello. And really, I would argue perhaps a deserved P2, given the consistency you've shown in the CXR Project Black Ferrari throughout this season, ever since the start. And I have to ask, when you look back over this championship, what round will stay in your mind forever in terms of the round you'll most remember?
I know you're asking someone who's got a bit of a short-term memory, or not got a short-term memory, I should say. On the spot, I cannot think of anything of a particular round that was that made any big difference. Spa wasn't my best performance, and I think probably looking back, Spa was probably the one with the safety car that came out. Then Vin was behind me, then a lap up, whereas he was not far. He was quarter a lap, half a lap ahead of me, but on the same racing lap. And then when the safety car came out, he was then behind me. At that point, I knew the race was shot. But so yeah, probably Spa was. Whilst I like Spa and I normally perform well there, it was with the way the safety car came out and how it shook out with the cars around me on track, and I did have some contact, which made me my own fault. I misjudged braking and hit Vin into the bus stop, so I needed to pit early, and with that, the safety car and the way it all shook out, it wasn't a race that was one I look back on fondly. So if anything, Spa is what I'm going to say.
That's fair play, but also do keep in mind, and this may jog your memory, you also picked up your maiden win in the series, albeit you were denied it in Season 2 of the GT3 Championship at Spa-Francorchamps, but do recall the happy memory of seeing the CXR Project Black Machine cross the line winner eventually, so that's one to take forward, although I can't quite remember which
There is.
circuit.
Yeah, I didn't have notes of that, and to be honest, yes, there was the win at Spa as well. It was bittersweet because there was the win at Spa, but there was also the other race that got away from me, which could have been better. But no, it's been a great season and solid driving by everyone, and it's been good to be involved, and nice to be close racing, especially the guys I've been racing around, Gavin, and Carmelo, Vin, and the other guys running around us at the front. They're very, very good to race against. They give space. You can rely on making a move, hanging it on the outside, but you won't necessarily make it but you'll get the space, so you can attempt it. And it's good racing with people where you can stick it around the outside or put it up the inside. Maybe not, move to nothing, but you're not going to end up both off the track because you're both aware of the other cars around you, and it's nice racing with people that can do that because it makes it more fun.
Indeed, and well, with all the fun you've had in this championship and whatnot, it's been fantastic to see you out there enjoying every and each round. But just before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on air tonight?
Thanks to my mum. Thanks, mum. CXR Racing and the guys in the team for their support and camaraderie. The guys in NXTGEN for putting on the series and all the racers in the series. Thanks for taking part. It's been good racing with you. Some more tough than others, and but good clean racing for the most part throughout. So it's been quite a good series to be involved in. It has to be said.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, Matthew. And we're glad you've enjoyed it from start to finish. And we do look forward to seeing you participate potentially in future seasons. But until then, I'm sure your mum will appreciate the shout out as well. Until then, we must say thank you for joining us in the interview room and congratulations, not just on your 4th place today at Le Mans, but also to what is your 2nd place in the GT3 Pro Apex Race Academy Championship. A brilliant result.
Thank you, mate. It's always a good commentary you give as well, and it's great watching the races back, and it's made the season. So thanks for your input as well, Paul.
No problem. It's my pleasure. But with that, I wish you a lovely evening, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
we'll cross paths again soon.
Very soon. Thank you.
So hearing that from Matthew Hodges, very happy with how things have played out over the course of the entirety of the season. Maybe a bit of a feeling with regards to tonight, and indeed a couple of rounds that didn't quite work out the way he wanted, and that bittersweet round of Spa-Francorchamps in particular, where he was saying out the fact picking up his maiden win, the win that he was denied, interesting enough, at the same circuit in Season 2 of the GT3 Championship, but was able to pick it up this time around, and then of course the feature race not going to plan, but definitely one of those drivers who's really come through. His consistency is the thing that really stands out for Hodges in terms of just being able to deliver result upon result, even against adverse circumstances. And that's why he was in contention for the win in the championship, because he was delivering every time. And if he is back for a future series that we run here at NXTGEN, you can imagine he's going to be up there. He may not be grabbing the headlines initially, but he'll be grabbing the headlines as the season goes on. But now we must come to our final interviewee this evening, another GT3 Apex Race Academy Pro driver, and that is William Foyle, as we're about to bring him into the interview room to hear his thoughts on a race which I think he was thinking was all wrapped up, only for it to become unravelled with half an hour to go. And as he joins us in the interview room, William, a race which was looking to be all on course for a rather comfortable lead until the final stint where we saw Vin Glenn go full attack mode on yourself. P2 today, do you think that was the best you could achieve, or was it a bit of a surprise?
I'm really unsure. I think P2 is a good result. Definitely is a good result. But I think if I'd played my strategy a bit different, maybe the win would have been possible for sure.
So taking us through it then, we saw obviously you started towards the front of the GT3 Pro class field in this race based on championship point position, and a great start from yourself which saw you break away from the GT3 field. It was almost as if it was the perfect start.
Yeah, well, it was an excellent start to break away for sure and try and build that gap. And that was definitely what I was going for at the beginning, to build the gap. And it worked to a certain extent until we got basically, I think, to the final pit stop.
Indeed, and just dissecting it over the course of the opening 2 stints, we saw you continuously open up a gap and expand it out, and it looked as though they're nice balance in terms of the fuel saving, plus also measuring the tyres and making sure not to put too much on them, particularly as you were saying to me in the build-up to tonight around the low grip through the Porsche curves and how that can cause the rear end to destabilise, but you looked very in control.
Yeah, the grip level, I could really feel it. It really improved in the second half of the first stint. So I was able to really push around there, and I decided to not take tyres on the first stop and just go for fuel because I was thinking, well, the track temp was really low. So let's just add the fuel and try and see if we can open up this gap. And Vin took on tyres, which at the time I thought, well, that's the wrong move because he's going to end up with dead tyres and it's going to be hotter, but somehow he made it work.
Oh, indeed, and that was a surprise. And we come on to that surprise, of course, with Vin Glenn in the end, roaring on through after his second stop and closing up. And he had to make the overtake on yourself down the Mulsanne straight. It almost looked as though with the tyre change that he'd made earlier, you were just struggling for pace. So was that the case of that tyre change?
Well, when I come out the pits, I knew the fuel was going to be tight because my fuel calculation was saying that I need a full tank for the final stop. So I was thinking, well, that's not good if it's saying I've got need a full tank for the final stop. So when I come out the pits, it was actually saying I think it was a huge amount of fuel I needed to save. I think it was like 5 to 6 liters. So that's nearly an entire lap of fuel I had to save in one stint, and I think I backed off too much at the beginning laps of the final stint, which made me just drop back into the grass of Vin, and then I couldn't keep on to the back of him because I was still having to bring that fuel number down. But yeah, it was a good race. I was surprised the gap to third, but yeah, definitely. If I'd played the strategy different and maybe fuel saved at the beginning and dropped back in the pack, it maybe have been a different result tonight.
Well, indeed, even despite losing out on the win in that final stint, you managed to race very well and one of your season best performances in a season which has seen relatively limited participation from yourself due to personal circumstances. But I have to ask, reflecting on the rounds you participated in, do you have one round in particular that stands out, or perhaps a moment or a battle that stands out that you'll remember going forward?
I think my standout highlight of the season was with Matt Hodgins because when we were both coming back from the back around Daytona, we managed to work together throughout the field and come back. I think it was to P7 and P8. I think it was something like that. So that was probably my favourite moment of the season. And funny enough, I really like Le Mans as a track, driving it. So being able to finish second tonight and sort of have quite good pace in the race was probably another standout highlight for me.
Oh, brilliant. Two great moments there to carry forward with yourself. And indeed, it's the case that with this second place tonight, if I do a quick bit of mental math, that does mean I think you'll end up finishing in what would be a P10 in the championship, all said and done. So you've crept into the top 10. And well, just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on air?
No, thank you to you guys for hosting it. It was been a fun league, the race I've been able to participate. And yeah, it's been really fun, and the commentary team, you guys do really well putting this broadcast together. So thank you for that. And Chris Torsport, my team, thank you for being part of the team. And yeah, let's keep going.
Well, indeed, and actually that's one thing I forgot to mention. With the result you've delivered tonight, it may be the case, subject to official confirmation, that Crest Autosport of Apex Tracks have actually snuck into the top 10 at the final hurdle. If that's so, I do have to ask you a quick thoughts on the performance of Crest Autosport with yourself and Nigel Stock and Ben Payne. It's been quite the combination, but you've all come through over the course of the season.
Yeah, we've all done really well. I think we've grown together as a team. Let's hope. And Nigel's probably the standout of all of us because he was joined the team this season and he's done really well. And he's done really well in the Mazdas run by you guys as well. So onwards and upwards for the team for sure.
Oh, indeed, and onwards and upwards, not just for the team, but for yourself, William, because I have to say, once again, thank you for joining us in the interview. Congratulations on the second place today, and congratulations on the 10th place finish in the GT3 Pro Apex Racing Academy Championship come the checkered flag. We really do look forward to seeing you out on circuit in the future.
Thank you, Paul.
All the best.
All the best. Bye.
So hearing there from William Foal, and a bit of a mixed day in terms of emotions today with regards to that P2. As you heard in there, it's the fact that with regards to the way he approached the race on the strategy front, wondering if he'd let himself fall back into the pack in the opening 2 stints and then work together with other drivers to fuel save, could it have worked out better in terms of what would have been the strategy call and in the end being able to take the fight to Vinglen? It didn't materialise, and to be fair, Foal, when he was up front by such a margin and pushing on strong, you can imagine in his mind he thought, well, there's no way anyone's going to catch me, but in the end it was the case that Vinglen had other ideas and came charging on through to that final stint, and was still a P2, something to be happy about, as William was saying they're very happy with that, and also reflecting on that race with Matthew Hodges at Daytona Road Course, working together with Hodges to recover after a very difficult start, the pair of them making their way up through the field, and I do remember it now that he's mentioned it, and it is the case. We look forward to seeing William Foal and indeed the Crest Autosport Apex Tracks team take to the circuit in future Next Gen Racing Series. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry to say it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching in what has been a season crammed full of racing action from start to finish. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community in terms of the series we run, what we stand for and what we do, then why not check us out at our official website, nextgenracing.co.uk. Or if you're on Facebook, you can always go to our official Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom we'd not be able to bring you this series, Apex Racing Academy and IMB Racewear. And, well, we haven't got another round to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen, but what we do suggest is that you stay tuned for future Next Gen Racing leagues on iRacing, which will be coming in August 2022. To give you a flavour, we have already recently announced to our drivers, it is the case, we have got a Touring Car Racing Championship coming up and also a Porsche 992 Super Cup Challenge Series as well. And I think there may even be a new rendition of the GT3 Championship on the card. So 3 series coming in just under a month's time, and indeed it will be the case that they will all be brought to you live by commentary teams, perhaps even by myself, but it will be a lot that you do not want to miss, and we'll have to wait and see what August holds. But until then, it has been my pleasure to bring you this series. I have been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. We have been Next Gen Racing. Thank you so much for being with us from start to finish in what has been the Next Gen Racing PROTO GT3 Championship on iRacing. And until next time, remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.